Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Left UA High and Became Ultimate Venom Spider with Rwby Movie. Before we start, please go support DevDog756 for writing that awesome fanfic. After an incident that left the League of Villains either dead or injured, most of Izuku's classmates start talking behind his back, calling him a monster, and saying he's no better than the villains, which leads to him leaving the school and going to Beacon Academy instead. Chapter 1. A new adventure begins. Izuku narration. Alright, let's do this. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I was bitten by a radioactive spider. And for the past 3 years, I've been the vigilante known as Spider-Man. I got screwed over as a kid by being quirkless, which led to a large amount of people around me thinking me as complete trash, with Katsuki Bakugo being the biggest offender. However, most people didn't do much due to my parents being well-known and respected scientists, so I had that going for me, I suppose. Though I had my best friend John Ark, his family and my parents to care about me, which was more than enough for me, I didn't really care what everyone thought, especially Bakugo. So I spent all my time training my mind and body behind the backs of everyone who ever doubted me. And I'll be honest, it was a joy seeing Bakugo lose his shit, seeing the quirkless Deku making him look bad. Then things changed when I was 10 years old, when me and John were at my parents' lab one day, when I was bitten by a spider that my parents were using for their experiments, leading to me feeling awful. However, the next day, I felt better than I had ever felt before in my life, as I saw I was in good shape. Well, good shape for a 10-year anyway. Then I quickly found out that I gained powers that resembled a spider, which my parents were definitely surprised, but they were happy I had powers now and I could become a hero. I was happy too, not doubt about that. However, I took a different approach. I realized how flawed the heroes really are and how many of them only cared about all the glory and nothing else, and I made a promise to never become like that. I spent the next 4 years getting a good grasp on my powers until the time I turned 14, when I started off as Spider-Man. And to say I made an impact as Spider-Man was an understatement. People actually felt safe with me around, and they appreciated the fact I wasn't sticking around for the glory. Of course, there were people who didn't like me one bit, but I just ignored them all. Then one day, I was approached by Nizu with the chance to attend U.A, which I took a moment to consider before agreeing to it, mostly due to the face that would get the whole illegal heroics crap off my back. Of course, Bakugo wasn't happy to learn I was in U.A, but was pissed to learn I was Spider-Man, while the rest of our classmates were surprised to being classmates with Spider-Man. Also, Almight trusted me with his quirk one for all, knowing that I am more than capable of handling it, and due to my true heroic nature, after training for it, of course. And honestly, training to get a good grasp on OFA was a bit of a hassle, since in Almight's own admission, he's not the best teacher in the world, and he didn't have to train to get used to OFA since he was able to use it at 100% from the get-go. Though Almight did pitch in some suggestions to help, and with that, my quick thinking and help from Almight's mentor Gran Torino, I got a good handle on OFA and even made up a new technique, full cowl. Then one day, we investigated some meteorite that landed outside the city when I found some odd black ooze, which I thought was nothing. Which I quickly realized I couldn't be more wrong, as the ooze started expanding around me, forming a black suit. I was understandably very shocked and surprised, which was increased when I heard someone talking to me, as I quickly realized the suit was actually a sentient being, named Venom. Venom then gave me a brief rundown on who and what he is, being an alien symbiote from another planet. And after some thinking, I agreed to bond with Venom. And let's just say I quickly felt the improvements. I was stronger and fast than before with Venom, though I made the choice not to always rely on him as a crutch all the time, only using Venom at night and when I absolutely need more strength. Plus, wearing a black suit in broad daylight isn't too useful since you're just sticking out like a sore thumb. Anyway, things went off good until the summer training camp, where we got ambushed by the League of Villains, though it wasn't too bad due to quick thinking on my part, like how I managed to save Ragdoll from get jumped and possibly kidnapped. Though I was mostly occupied beating the brakes off one of the League members, Muscular. And it was extremely satisfying hearing him beg for his life, after all the lives he's taken, as I kept on beating him down, and I considered killing him, but I decided that all the physical and mental trauma I inflicted onto him was more than enough, seeing he was no longer a threat as I saw Mandalay's nephew Kota looking at me, with fear. I told the kid to run, but he didn't listen to me, so that was his fault. Besides, he's just an immature kid taking his anger out on everyone else because his parents died, saving not just him, but countless other innocent people, and just sees his only remaining family as selfish for being a hero. After that, the League eventually left, though Bakugo's dumbass got kidnapped, and after recovering I decided to go and save him, against my better judgment, as I had a private talk with Aizawa, which he said he knew that I was going to go save Bakugo and that nothing could make me change my mind, basically giving me the green light. I did debate on leaving it to the heroes, but I made my mind up the moment I heard from Aizawa that Empty Lady was going to be involved for whatever bucking reason. That dumb blonde won't know subtlety if it kicked her in the ass, and the fact she's the walking definition of property damage just baffled my mind to why she was considered over midnight, who could render the League unconscious, but I digress. After some convincing, I went out to recuse the ungrateful Pomeranian with the help of Yayorozu, Todoroki, Kirishima and Ida, though after Ida and I had a little argument about our decision, with hits being traded and me making an uncalled for jab at his brother, but that's beside the point. After some time, we managed to find the League's hideout before the pros did, as I had a plan in mind: get in, grab Bakugo and get out, simple as that. First I slipped into the Nomu factory we found thanks to the tracking device Yayorozu planted on a Nomu that attacked the training camp as I placed down charges I had made in order to blow all these freaks of nature to Kingdom Come. And once I donned Venom and snuck into the League's hideout and took care of most of the heavy hitters, I tried to get Bakugo out, but like always, he started yelling and berating me in Venom, which he had done multiple times before. And this time, the dam broke and we lost it as tendrils launched from my arms, causing lots of damage to the building as the League members took cover, as I webbed up Bakugo and webbed his mouth shut as I threw him to Kirishima. Shigaraki screamed at Kurojiri to get the Nomu, right before all the charges I placed all went off, destroying the factory and all the Nomas inside, much to the anger of Shigaraki. I told Kirishima and the others to get as far from here as they could as I started fighting off the League, thinking smart as I webbed up Kurojiri and knocked him out, due to seeing him more valuable alive. Compress tried to pull a fast one on me, but my spider sense kicked in as I dodged his attack before quickly punching him very hard in the gut, causing him to drop to his knees and coughed up lots of blood. Spinner tried to sneak attack me, which I saw coming as I dodged the Stain wannabe's attacks with ease. God, I hate Stain so much, claiming to want to kill all the fake heroes, yet hunts down whoever he wants without doing any research. I then yanked his sword out of his hand, destroyed it right in front of him before using the 2 pieces to stab him in the leg, causing him to scream in pain before I threw him over my shoulder and onto the ground. Taking a moment to grind my foot in his face, the same thing he did to Pixie Bob at the training camp before continuing the fight as Shigaraki tried to attack me. But all it took was one kick to send the man-child flying into the wall, making sure to web his wrists, and 1 finger on each hand to render him unless. Twice and Magna both tackled me, though I quickly threw them back as Dabi took the chance to blast me in the back with his flames, which did hurt Venom a bit, but we trained to minimize his weaknesses so it wasn't too much of a problem. Though Magna did try to attack me while I was stunned, but Venom retracted from my right arm as I charged up OFA before punching her in the chest very hard, causing my fist to go right through her chest. The light left her eyes as I pulled my fist out of her chest as she fell to the ground, which caused Twice and Toga to try and attack me out of sheer rage, before I got launched outside by an unknown third party. All for One, Almight's archenemy, who he warned me about, as I knew that I had to take him down for good as we began to fight, with All for One mocking All Might for sending me alone, which I told him I came here on my own violation. And the fight was incredibly hard, one of the hardest fights I've ever been in my whole life, as All for One caused lots of damage to the area we were fighting in, though I was able to get the people to safety, while they were cheering me on. The fight went on for a good while, but things started to tilt in my favor when I managed to destroy All for One's mask, seeing his face, or lack thereof, as I laughed at the fact All Might did more damage to him than I thought, and that really made All for One mad. He completely abandoned his calm and collected demeanor as he started throwing everything he had at me, being blinded by his rage as I kept on throwing quips and insults his way, further making him mad and giving me lots of openings. all while hearing Shigaraki lose his shit, screaming at me for making his master look bad as I kept on fighting, not stopping until All for One was deader than dead, all while I could overhear the people cheering me on, telling me to finish him. I even saw Yayorozu, Todoroki and Ida in the crowd cheering me on. Hell, some people even started throwing stuff at him. Honestly, seeing people all come together put a smile on my face as All for One tried, and failed to fight back against me as I launched tendrils from my arm which stabbed him. All for One threw up blood as he couldn't believe he was about to die, and to a kid behind a mask that All Might trusted with beating him, then he tried pulling a power move on me out of sheer desperation. He told me that Tamura Shigaraki is actually the grandson of All Might's old mentor and predecessor Nana Shimura, which was a bit of a shock to me, I guess, though I hold no real connection to her besides being users of OFA, but that's about it. I then yanked my arm back, pulled All for One towards me as I charged up OFA into my right arm at 12%, and that combined with my natural strength resulted in All for One's death when my fist connected his chest. All for One went limp as he fell to the ground, before hearing Shigaraki screaming at the top of his lungs while cursing at me for killing his master, causing me to turn to see him being dragged by Dabi, kicking and screaming as they went through a warp gate from Kurogiri as I rushed towards them, only for Shigaraki, Dabi, Toga twice and Spinner escaping through the gate. Though they didn't have enough to free Kurogiri, so at least there was that as I went back over to All for One, to make sure he was definitely dead, which he was. After making sure All for One was dead, I collapsed to the ground to get a bit of rest as I saw the people coming towards me to see if I was alright and asked if they could do any to help, which I said to help any people that need it, which they all quickly got on top of. After the adrenaline wore off, I looked around and took in what I'd done and just sighed. I didn't like that I killed them, but I knew it had to be done. The League had tried to kill us 3 times and would keep going trying. Though I didn't kill all of them, I did kill the real leader while also capturing their walking get out of jail free card, and I know the identities of the remaining members with the exception of Dabi, due to me doing research beforehand. The heroes then finally showed up and they were all shocked to see what had went down as All Might ran to me, worried about my well-being as I just gave a thumbs up. I noticed Endeavor had a look of shock on his face and I swore Kamui Woods and Empty Lady both shot me dirty looks, but I didn't care. What's done is done as the cops and the civilians were all cheering. I wish I got the same warm reception with most of the rest of my classmates though. Kirishima, Yayorozu, Ida and Todoroki all didn't think any less of me and all agreed I did the right thing in the end, though Bakugo didn't and thought this was the best chance to make me look like a monster. When he got brought back to the dorms, he immediately started telling the other students that I was secretly a heartless murderer, that I went to the League's hideout to murder them all and that I tried to kill him, and most of them fell for his lies. U.A already had the dorms from the get-go in this. The ones who didn't listen to Bakugo, besides the ones who were there were Uraraka, Kaminari, Jiro, Tokoemi, Tsuyu, Shinso and Koda, so at least I had them to look after me. And naturally, Monoma took this as a chance to further insult the class more, which really made me hate the guy more than I already did, though Kendo did keep his ass in line and she actually asked for my side of what happened, which I explained. She then told me that she knew I wouldn't have just killed people on a whim and that she, Tetsutisu, Pony and to my surprise Shiozaki all were on my side. Though, after 2 weeks of endless torment and name-calling, I finally had enough as I went to Nizu and the teachers and told them I was leaving the school, not wanting to work with people who immediately turned on me without even hearing me out first. And to my surprise, Ida, Kirishima, Todoroki, Yayorozu, Jiro, Uraraka and Kaminari came in right when I did and all said they wanted to leave too, for the same reasons as me, to which Nizu understood our choices. Though Nizu said something that piqued our interests, that he's friends with the headmaster of Beacon and he saw this outcome coming and he arranged for us to be transferred to Beacon so we can continue our education. I definitely wasn't complaining since John attends Beacon, so that was an immediate agreement on my end as the others agreed too, though before I left I gave them a button they can press whenever they need my help. A few days later, we arrived at Beacon and Uraraka was rendered speechless from how massive the school was. Even Yayorozu was stunned as we met Professor Ojban. After a little chat with the professor, we took part in Beacon's initiation to demonstrate our skills, even though he was already confident in our abilities. And we all knocked it out of the park if I do say so myself, as I was on a team with Kirishima, Kaminari and Todoroki while Yayorozu was on a team with Jiro, Uraraka and Ida. Izuku narration end. Izuku, Kirishima, Denki and Shoto were in their dorm room, getting settled in as they placed some of their things around. Man, this is way bigger than the dorms back at UA, Denki said in amazement at the size of the dorms at Beacon. Makes sense, they're meant to hold 4 people. Though the beds are taking up a lot of space, Kirishima noted as the 4 looked at their beds. Yeah, they are. Oh, how about we turn them into makeshift bunk beds? Denki suggested, giddy at the idea of having bunk beds. I mean, we could do that, but it'd be really unsafe, Shoto noted, knowing it'd be very difficult to keep the beds together without falling. Why not have Midoriya web the beds together? Denki asked as Izuku looked at him. Kaminari, my webs only last for an hour, remember? Izuku said as Denki felt dumb, and held his head down in shame as Kirishima patted him on the back. Let's hold off on the bunk bed thing until we get our hands on proper tools so we can sleep without worrying about the beds falling, Izuku said as he turned to see his best friend John in the doorway. What the hell, man, had I knew you'd be one of the new students, I would have thrown a party. John joked as Izuku just chuckled and walked to his best friend/partner and hugged him. Figured it'd be better as a surprise. Guys, this is my best friend John Arc John, that's Ejiro Kirishima, Denki Kaminari and Shoto Todoroki. Izuku introduced the boys to each other as John shook hands with him. So, they in the know about you know? John asked as Izuku gave him a nod while the 3 boys were confused to what John meant, before seeing John stick to the ceiling just like Izuku. What the hell? Denki said in shock before the boys all quickly realized what was up. Wait, that means that you're… Kirishima was about to continue his sentence before John cut him off. Yep, you guys are looking at the Scarlet Spider, John said with confidence as Izuku placed his arm on his shoulder. Spider brothers, back together again, Izuku said with a big old smile. Oh, hell yeah, John said as the 2 Spider-Men fist bumped when they saw a blonde girl walk into their room. Oh, Yang Soup, John said as he and Yang fist bumped. Sup VB, so this the best friend you never stop talking about? Yang asked while keeping direct eye contact with Izuku. Yep, told he was a handsome bastard, John said with a chuckle as Izuku just looked at him with a deadpan look. Really, dude? Izuku asked. What? She asked and I answered. John said back to his best friend. Didn't tell me he's also a cutie. I'm Yang Xiaolong, handsome, Yang said with a flirty smile. Izuku Midoriya, nice to meet you, gorgeous, Izuku said as he shook Yang's hand while Shoto, Kirishima and Denki were all shocked. How does he do it so casually? Kirishima asked, being very proud of his friend. He's got to have some kind of Spidey riz, he has to, Denki said while Shoto was just snacking on some soba while Izuku introduced Yang to his friends. Mind if we show you around, Izuku? My treat, Yang asked as Izuku nodded. I don't see why not, Izuku said as Yang smiled as Izuku, Kirishima, Shoto and Denki followed her and John for their tour of the school. Oh, I can already tell this is going to be very interesting, Izuku thought to himself as he kept his eyes on the beautiful blonde bombshell known as Yang Xiaolong. Chapter 2, New Friends. How is it that this place is like 4 times bigger than Udata yet is easier to get around here? Izuku asked, much to John's amusement. So, do your webs actually come out of your wrists or not? Yang asked as Izuku had a look of confusion on his face. Did you not ask John that? He doesn't exactly kept his web shooters hidden, which I keep telling him to make a more sleek and compact design, Izuku said while shooting John a not subtle look. Well, not all of us are super smart geniuses, Izuku, John said as Izuku rolled his eyes. Dude, we've taken apart our web shooters and put them back together multiple times, Izuku said back as he turned back to look at Yang. Well, I thought about asking, but I didn't want to come off as insensitive if they do, Yang said, being completely honest. Well, to answer your question, Yang, our webs are not organic. They are a specialized fluid me and John created, Izuku explained as he showed Yang a vial of the web fluid. Wow, that's neat. I told Weiss it's not real webs, Yang said as she did a little celebration dance. You don't think that she means? Denki asked Shoto and Kirishima as they both nodded their heads. Yep, has to be who you're thinking about. Let's hope she's at least friendly, Kirishima said as they kept walking until they saw Yang and John's teams interacting with Momo and her team, as the two blondes walked towards their respective groups. Quite the colorful cast, huh? Denki joked while chuckling as Izuku and Shoto just rolled their eyes. Like any of us are ones to talk, Shoto said as he pointed at his, Denki, Kirishima and Izuku's hair as they all chuckled. Anyways guys, this is Izuku, the best friend I've been on about. Izuku, these are my teammates Nora Valkyrie, Lyran and Piranikos, and those are Yang's teammates Ruby Rose, Weiss Schnee and Blake Belladonna, John said as Izuku introduced himself before his team introduced themselves to teams Ruby and JNPR, before John gave Izuku a nod before letting them know that he's Spider-Man, much to their shock and surprise. No way, I can't believe this, we're classmates with the amazing Spider-Man! Ruby yelled in joy of being classmates with Spider-Man. Well, I wouldn't call myself amazing, Izuku said sheepishly while rubbing the back of his head. I know sis. Also Weiss, you owe me money, their webbing is not organic, he told me it's a specialized fluid, Yang said with a smug smile as Weiss rolled her eyes and handed her money. Wait, you two bet on if our webbing was organic or not? John asked as Yang put her newly required money into her wallet. Yep, Weiss insisted your webs were organic, while I made the right choice thinking they weren't, Yang said as Weiss just rolled her eyes. Well, excuse me for thinking the webs were just another part of their powers, Weiss said while pouting as Izuku and John just chuckled. Don't sweat it. It's a common mistake that people make even though again, John keeps his web shooters right out in the open, Izuku said as John just rolled his eyes. Izuku, if I wanted to get nagged at, I'd do something very stupid and let my mom know about it. Oh, that can be arranged in a few minutes, Izuku said as he and John looked each other in the eyes before they started laughing, while Izuku and Blake made eye contact with each other as he just smiled, while Blake was thinking of something to say. So you and John have the same powers, right? Ren asked as Izuku and John looked at each other before looking back at the others. We have the same base powers, though we have some unique abilities, Izuku explained. Izuku can generate electric blasts while I've got retractable talons at the end of my fingers, John explained as Izuku showed his electricity while John's talons came out. How come we haven't seen you use them before, John? Pyrrha asked as John retracted his talons. I usually like sticking to my fists to fight, plus I didn't think it'd be too necessary using them on the Grim, John said to Pyrrha while rubbing the back of his head. Plus, during training for U.A, I developed a stockpiling quirk, Izuku explained as he demonstrated OFA to Team Ruby and JNPR as they were all surprised. Suppose that extra strength comes in handy, Weiss said as Izuku just nodded his head in response. Definitely, especially during that fight with that League of Rejects a few weeks ago, Yang said as Izuku had an uneasy look on his face, which his team and Momo's noticed. You all saw that, huh? Izuku asked while holding his left arm. Kind of hard not to, it was literally everywhere. You really kicked their sorry asses, Nora said in glee as John looked at her with a look that told her to knock it off. Yeah, that wasn't exactly one of our finest moments, Izuku admitted. Well, if it's any consolation, we all think you did the right thing and wait, you said Ruby asked in confusion as Momo, Kyoka, Achiko and Ida all looked at each other. You all aren't easily freaked out, are you? Ida asked, furthering to the confusion as Venom's head popped out from Izuku's shoulder. Hello? Venom said as Team Ruby and JNPR were all speechless and shocked as Nora fell over backwards, before Pyrrha helped her up. Ren, I think our pancakes were spiked with LSD, Nora said to the target of her not too subtle affection while rubbing her eyes. I'm seeing this too, Nora, it's not just you, Pyrrha said while not knowing how to react to this situation. Izuku, who and what is that? John asked, having a lot of questions for his best friend. Oh, this is Venom. He's an alien symbiote I met during UA. Izuku explained as he gave Venom a chocolate bar, which Venom quickly ate. An actual, full-on alien from space? Ren asked, still in absolute shock. Well duh, where else would aliens be from? Izuku joked before Venom fully engulfed Izuku's body, minus his face, and turned into Izuku's black suit. So, your black suit has been an alien the whole time? That's so cool! Rwby exclaimed in joy as Venom retracted as Izuku just chuckled. Well, Venom's glad to hear that, Izuku said with a smile. Yeah, it still feels weird even after getting used to the fact Midori is bonded with an alien, Ida admitted while readjusting his glasses. Hey, if it helps, it helps. Plus, I have a friend to talk to anytime if needed, Izuku said while chuckling as he looked over to Blake. Blake, right, mind if I talk to you in private for a second? Izuku asked, which surprised Blake. Sure, Blake said as the two went somewhere private as Izuku made sure no one was around to overhear them. So, seems like you took my advice, Izuku said as Blake was surprised to hear what he said. You remember me? Blake asked as Izuku nodded. I never forget a lady. Besides, bows aren't that big and faintly move on their own, Izuku said as Blake felt embarrassed. Though, why are you hiding the fact you're a faunus, if you don't mind me asking? Izuku asked as Blake looked at the ground before looking back at Izuku. It's complicated. I just wanted people to see who am I, not what I am, Blake explained as Izuku kept eye contact with her. I see. Still, good to see you saw the flaws in what you were doing, Izuku said as he placed his hand on Blake's shoulder. Actually, I wasn't the only one who took your advice to heart, Blake said, which took Izuku by surprise. You weren't? Izuku asked as Blake nodded her head. Spider-Man saving the life of the White Fang's leader was a large topic of conversation, and your words led to a divide, Blake explained as the young green-haired boy was surprised. You're kidding. A few people I understand, but causing a split? There's no way my words were that impactful, Izuku said as Blake shook her head. You'd be surprised, you made half of the White Fang, including the High Leader, realize that we were going about things the wrong way, though sadly they didn't reach everyone, Blake said with a hint of sadness in her voice as her bow very faintly moved. Can't win them all, I guess. And if it means anything, I promise to help you and your team with anything you need, Izuku said as Blake looked at him with a look of surprise. You really mean that? Blake asked as Izuku quickly nodded his head. Of course, it's part of the Spider Oath, Izuku said as Blake giggled a bit. You and John have an oath? Yang asked as Izuku and Blake turned to see her standing around the corner. Yep, along with a secret handshake, a password, phrases, trigger words, etc. You might think it's goofy, which I will admit it is, but it helps in more ways than you'd think. Also, Yang, how long were you standing there for? Izuku asked as he wondered why Yang was standing there. Just got here, we were wondering if you two snuck off or something, Yang said as Izuku rubbed the back of his head, while Blake felt a bit jealous for whatever reason. So Izuku, have anything planned for later? Yang asked as she walked up to Izuku and placed her hand against the wall. As of right now, nope. Why do you ask? Izuku asked while looking at the beautiful blonde bombshell. I was wondering if you'd like to hang out later, just you and me, Yang asked while very subtly licking her lips while looking at Izuku. Sure, that'd be fun, Izuku said as Yang smiled before they headed back to the others as Izuku noticed Momo handing John a piece of paper, as he put it in his pocket. Much obliged, John said as he gave Momo a nod as Izuku, Yang and Blake sat down with them. What's with the piece of paper, John? Izuku asked as John just chuckled and waved it off. Nothing to worry about, Izuku, John said as Izuku slightly raised an eyebrow before brushing it off. Alright, if you say so, man, Izuku said as Yang moved closer to Izuku. I've said this multiple times before, but Hitches love Spider-Man, John said to himself and silently chuckled to himself, seeing Izuku and Yang talking. So, must being fun, swinging around the city with those webs of yours, Yang said as she placed her head on her hand. Yeah, it is honestly. And a bit scary too, but our spider sense helps me and John swing around, Izuku said. It's that weird alarm signal thing John brought up, right? Ren asked as the two Spider-Men nodded. Yep, though we both don't really know what the limits of it are. What we know for sure is that it lets us know whenever danger is close by, and that's about all we know. John explained as Pyrrha moved closer to John. So John, are you doing anything this weekend? Pyrrha asked while John took a second to think. Well, I was planning on hanging out with Izuku since we haven't in a while. Why? John asked as Pyrrha looked down for a brief moment before looking back at John. Oh, no reason, I was just curious is all. Pyrrha said as John then excused himself from the others as he walked off as Izuku just shook his head. I swear, you are a dense hitch. Izuku thought to himself as John arrived to his dorm room as he grabbed the paper he got from Momo as he unfolded it and looked at it, the paper containing a list of names. Alright, time to get to work, John said to himself as he sat down, pulled out a computer and started doing research while looking at the list he had. Chapter 3, Emerald and Gold. Izuku was in the middle of deciding what he should wear before he goes to hang out with Yang before deciding on an outfit to go in. Yeah, this should do it, Izuku said to himself as he finished getting ready before meeting up with Yang, and he was blown away by what she was wearing. WO, was all Izuku said as he walked over to Yang as she turned around and smiled at him. Took you long enough, cutie, Yang said as Izuku just chuckled. Sorry about that, saw a black cat on the way here so I took the long way, Izuku joked as Yang giggled at his joke. No, but seriously, I normally don't think too much about what I wear, since I'll normally have to switch into my suit, Izuku explained as Yang got up before they walked out of the school to hang out. Yikes, that must be a real pain in the ass, Yang said, imaging all the hassle Izuku goes through to change, but then slightly blushed at the idea of seeing Izuku shirtless. You have no idea. That's one reason I like using Venom since he can retract on command, and it definitely beats the normal BS I do to change, Izuku said as the two kept walking while getting to know each other as they reached the city. The two quickly got to having fun together upon making it to the city, wasting no time in finding things to do as Izuku definitely appreciated Yang's sense of humor, something he likes in a woman. While they were hanging out, Izuku decided to get himself a new dress suit as he and Yang stopped at a clothing store. After some time of choosing, Izuku finally chose and bought a brand new dress suit as he showed it to Yang. Wow, looking good, stud, Yang said with a flirty smile before Izuku did a very goofy dance, much to Yang's amusement. PTFFFFFFFF, ha 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 ha, oh my god! Yang bursted out in laughter as she fell onto the floor while passerbys also couldn't help but laugh at Izuku's shenanigans. Izuku then helped Yang up after finishing his little dance, while she was still in a laughing fit over what she just saw. PTFFFFFFF, what was with that? Yang asked as her laughter was dying down a bit. Just felt like being goofy, it's part of my charm, Izuku said as Yang's laughter ceased as she readjusted herself. Izuku then changed back into his normal clothes as he and Yang continued hanging out, enjoying every minute of it before coming across a news report about Mirko, which Izuku wasn't too big on seeing as he saw Yang's reaction to it, and she wasn't too pleased. Yang? Izuku asked while waving his hand in front of Yang's face, which snapped her back to reality before they continued walking around. What was with that back there? Izuku asked as Yang placed her hands in her pockets. Honestly, I don't like Mirko one bit. Hell, I have no idea how she even became a hero in the first place. She seems to care more about getting a good fight rather than saving people, and… Yang was going to continue ranting before Izuku cut her off. She thinks that teamwork is stupid and for cowards? Izuku asked as Yang looked at him, surprised that she finished her sentence. Yeah. Seems like we have similar thoughts on Mirko, Yang said as Izuku just chuckled. Yeah, it does. John and I actually fought her a few times before we won, Izuku whispered to Yang as she was very shocked to hear that. No way, how did you two manage that? Yang asked as she whispered back to Izuku. Easy, we teamed up against her and used her pride against her. Plus, our spider sense rendered all the stuff she tried to throw at us useless, and she's basically deadweight if you take her legs out of the equation, Izuku said to Yang as she chuckled. Guess when she had to deal with you two, she had no legs left to stand on, Yang said while laughing as Izuku couldn't help but laugh at Yang's joke. Oh, that's a good one, Izuku said as he and Yang kept laughing, before leaning onto each other to stay standing up. Oh, it's nice to have another person laughing at my jokes, Yang said with a smile as Izuku smiled back, while rubbing the back of his head. Guessing the other person is John? Izuku asked as Yang nodded her head. Figured, him and I have a similar sense of humor, Izuku said with a chuckle as Yang just smiled, quickly bonding with the green-haired web slinger. Meanwhile, John was in the city, leaning against a wall while on his phone, blending in the crowd when he saw Mina and Toru exit a nearby shop before trailing them to get a read on them. John walked a good ways behind them where he can overhear what they were talking about, which was mostly about clothes, trends, gossip, and them hitching about schoolwork, which was more than enough for John as he went in a different direction, without them even knowing he was even there. I don't know what I was expecting, and yet I'm still disappointed, John thought to himself as he pulled out a notebook and started writing down notes. Why did I think this was a good idea again? John wondered to himself as he looked over the notes. He was writing as he just sighed. The things I do for my best friend, John thought to himself before hearing a commotion from a little bit away as he went to see what was going on, only to see Bakugo causing a scene as he stepped in to break it up. Hey, Bomberhead! John shouted as Bakugo froze up and turned around to look at John, and he was from happy to see him. You! What the buck are you doing here, Vomit Boy? Bakugo yelled at John, who just rolled his eyes. Nice to see you too. Seems like you haven't changed one bit, John said with a deadpan and sarcastic tone in his voice, much to Bakugo's annoyance due to John not being afraid of him anymore. Bakugo then tried to attack John, only for John to completely sidestep Bakugo's attack, further pissing him off as he went to attack John with a right hook, before it got caught by John. What the? Let go! Bakugo yelled as he tried to free him from John's hold, only to fail due to John's grip. TCH, still predictable all these years later, John said before throwing Bakugo to the side, and Bakugo was about to take John again but stopped when he heard what all people around him were saying. Isn't that the Udata student who was chained up like an animal at the sports festival? How did that jerk ever get into Udata in the first place? I know, he acts the exact opposite of a hero. He probably cheated his way into UA. People like him are the reason we all love and appreciate Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider. They actually are in this for the right reasons. I heard from my cousin that he beat his friend who's quirkless. Shut the buck up, you bucking extras! Bakugo screamed as John playfully covered his ears. Inside voice, please. Oh wait, you don't even know what that is. It's either yelling or light yelling with you, John quipped, which made the people around them laugh while Bakugo got more pissed. All the negative attention Bakugo was getting was definitely getting to his head, nothing like how it was when he was a kid where he was constantly getting praised left and right. Now he got humiliated by Izuku and now John, people who he thought were nothing but trash his whole life, made him more mad than anything. Well, isn't this a twist on how things were when we were kids? Me and Izuku being in a very prestigious academy while you are being rightfully shunned for your garbage personality, John said as Bakugo got and stormed off in a fuss. Guess his hero name should be Short Fuse, John joked, which got the crowd burst out laughing as he walked off before continuing to jot down notes. All things considered, it seems like he'd be the most likely suspect, John thought to himself as he continued walking. Meanwhile, Izuku and Yang were having a friendly race which Izuku was winning as they finished it up. Damn, you're really fast, Yang said while catching her breath as she sat down, followed by Izuku. You're pretty fast yourself, Yang, Izuku said while chuckling as he got a pretty good look at her amazing body. Man, she looks great and is in great shape, Izuku thought to himself while slightly blushing as they got up after a little rest, before walking back to Beacon as Yang's hand was very close to Izuku's hand. Izuku's really nice, kind, cute, and handsome. I think I'm going to enjoy this, Yang thought to herself as she moved closer to Izuku as they headed back to Beacon, both wanting to get closer to each other. Chapter 4, Just Our Luck. Izuku and John were relaxing on the roof of the school, both laughing after the three-way food fight between their teams and Team Rwby, while just shooting the shit like best friends tend to do. And people think playing with your food isn't fun, Izuku said as he and John high-fived while making sure they were both clean of any stray pieces of food. Oh yeah, definitely. Gotta give Rwby props for that finisher she pulled was smart, and a heavy hitter. Even though I could have dodged it easily, John said as he and Izuku looked at their hands for a moment. Man, our powers are really busted when we take a moment to think about it. Especially in my case with the Quirk and Symbiote in the room, Izuku said as he pulled out some chocolate and gave it to Venom, as John yoinked a journal Izuku had in his jacket and looked through it. John saw that Izuku had taken detailed notes of their friends' semblances, and saw Izuku had some funny remarks written down, like Need for Speed for Rwby, Shadow Clone Jutsu for Blake and Shock and Awe for Nora. John then saw what Izuku wrote about Pyrrha, which definitely piqued his curiosity. Even more so when he saw Izuku had written potentially the most dangerous woman on the planet, much to his confusion. What's this all about, Izuku? John asked as he pointed at Izuku's note on Pyrrha. Think about the implication, John. Where does the limits of Pyrrha's semblance end? Izuku asked as John had a look of sudden realization on his face, picking up on what Izuku meant. Oh yeah, had a little rumble with Torchwick a while ago, John told Izuku, who gave him a thumbs up. Nice. Must have given him a headache and a half, Izuku joked as John couldn't help but laugh. Oh, definitely did that. I heard a ruckus at the docks, so obviously I suited up and went to investigate. And when I got there, I saw Blake and this Faunus guy named Sun fighting Torchwick and some white fan goons before I jumped in and quickly turned the tides. Then Rwby and this weird girl, pretty sure Rwby said her name was Penny, got involved and things went from 2 to 100 really damn fast, and I mean really fast. Though Torchwick managed to get away again, and then Sun asked me for an autograph. John explained as Izuku just looked at his friend with a look of shock. Damn, that sounds like fun. Would have loved to been there to kick some ass, Izuku said as John just chuckled as they stood up, before having a bro hug. And I gotta say, the ladies here are simply awesome, Izuku said as he could see Team Rwby from where they were, making John smirk. Slow down there, lover boy. We don't want a legion of girls fighting over you. Again, John said as he and Izuku shivered at the thought of unpleasant memories from their past. Don't remind me, John. Besides, just enjoying the view, that's all, Izuku said as he was looking at Yang, which just made John chuckle at his partner. However, they then noticed a fleet heading towards Beacon as the two web slingers did a double take, making sure they weren't seeing things. Oh shit. Meanwhile, Roman Torchwick was in the middle of getting chewed out by his associates Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald for not taking care of certain loose ends sooner, while Roman was getting annoyed with the fact that they are just completely ignorant to all the precautions he's been taking to ensure things go swimmingly. Look, maybe if I was more aware of what's going on here, I'd be able to plan my next robberies more efficiently. My hands are already tied in multiple directions trying not to get catched by Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider, Roman said with lots of annoyance as Mercury just scoffed at what he just said. Oh, who would have thought Roman Torchwick is scared of two guys in red and blue spandex? What's the big deal with those loud-mouthed wall crawlers anyway? Mercury said as Roman just shot him a glare. I'll tell you the big deal, punk. You have any idea how many of my jobs those two have ruined? Too damn many, countless hours of planning gone right down the toilet. Plus, doesn't help that Scarlet Spider was at the docks a while ago, and especially with that fancy black suit Spider-Man has. Roman explained before handing Mercury a newspaper about Spider-Man's massacre of All for One and most of the League of Villains, complete with a picture of Spider-Man with his fist inside All for One's chest. Not only that, they are more than willing to kill if there are no other options. So tell me, punk, still don't take them seriously? Roman asked as Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald all felt a huge sense of dread seeing Spider-Man in his black suit, covered in blood. The Mr. Potato-looking head-ass was over 200 years old and was said to have who knows how many quirks, and he was nowhere close to being a match for a very pissed-off Spider-Man. And trust me, you do not want to piss off either of them. They will hunt you down and will not stop until they find you. Roman said to the trio as Cinder attempted to mask her fear, with a mixed amount of success. Well, doesn't matter anyway. We're done with dust. Have the white fan clear out the building, I'll send you details and coordinates tonight. Cinder said as she, Mercury and Emerald all left the building as Roman just rolled his eyes. I swear, no loyalty. How do they expect me to work with them when I barely even know what their plan is? Roman thought to himself, as he started smoking to take his mind off the stress. Let's see how high and mighty they will be after getting their asses kicked by Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider. Oh, that would be so fitting. Hell, the wall crawlers may just be two of the only people I can respect. Meanwhile, Izuku and John were heading to the library while Izuku was a little bit stressed with the Atlas military showing up at the school out of the blue. Oh, this just great. Just absolutely fantastic, Izuku said, trying his best to keep his cool as John slapped him across the face to help calm him down. Izuku, I get why you're panicked, but Ashbin promised he won't reveal our identities without our permission. That's not what I'm worried about, John. I'm worried that General Ironwood, you know, the most paranoid man to ever exist, will think that we're the problem, try to find out who we are and steal our blood in order to create super soldiers. And that's not even taking into consideration what he'll do to Venom, Izuku said, with Venom obviously being scared of whatever could happen as John placed his hand on Izuku's shoulder. That won't happen, Izuku, I swear. And if Ironwood thinks we're a problem, the Tin Head should take a look at his whole kingdom. With how both Atlas and Mistral both treat the Faunus, it's honestly surprised they didn't turn to violence sooner. John reassured Izuku as he fully relaxed before they reached the library. Chapter 5, Cooldown. A few hours ago. At the Midoriya household, Izuku's father Hisashi woke up and immediately felt the bed was lighter as he just sighed, knowing what his wife was doing before getting out of bed and changing. After changing, Hisashi made his way to his and Inko's study and saw his wife working away, and despite not seeing her face, he knew she was really tired. Inko, you pulled an all-nighter again, Hisashi said as he walked up to Inko and grabbed a chair, before sitting beside her. Relax, honey, just working on some old projects, Inko said, even though both she and Hisashi both knew that was a lie before Hisashi turned Inko around to face him, seeing Inko had bags under her eyes. This is about the whole mess with Izuku leaving you, isn't it? Hisashi asked, knowing better than anyone that Inko has a habit of overworking herself in order to get her mind off of things she doesn't want to think about. Honestly, Hisashi, I saw something like this coming a mile away. Especially with how those kids who backstab our baby were all fine with Katsuki, despite his constant threats and insults. And here I thought Katsuki couldn't stoop any lower. It's a miracle he hasn't been expelled. Inko ranted as Hisashi held her hand, wanting to help keep her cool. And the worst part is, I don't know if I can even look Mitsuki and Masaru in the eyes anymore. Hell, I can't even tell if they were genuinely ignorant to what their little shit stain was doing to Izuku, or if they never really cared about Izuku in the first place. They never even bothered asking us why Izuku stopped visiting them, Inko said before she bursted into tears, promoting Hisashi to hug her while rubbing her back. Inko, we both know they both care about Izuku, but if I'm honestly at this rate, I don't think they should be anywhere near him anymore. Like you said, they didn't think to ask why Izuku stopped visiting them, nor have they done anything about Katsuki's extremely obvious anger issues and superiority complex. Hell, Mitsuki basically encourages him to act the way he does without even realizing it, and Masaru just sits on his ass and does nothing. Hisashi said, trying his best not to join Inko in crying, but some tears managed to slip through. It's like what June said about them, with Mitsuki's anger issue and Masaru being the biggest pushover in the history of pushovers, it's not even close to being a surprise why Katsuki ended up the way he is, Hisashi said as Inko's tears stopped, but her eyes were still a bit watery. You're right, Hisashi. We should cut our losses and cut contact with them, for now anyway. I don't want to look at either of them and risk doing some I might regret, Inko said as Hisashi wiped her tears away and kissed her on the cheek. You're right, now please get some rest. We both know Izuku wouldn't want you beating yourself up over this, Hisashi said with his hands on Inko's shoulders before she smiled and headed off to bed to get some rest, before Hisashi noticed he had a call and saw it was Mitsuki as he quickly ignored it, sticking to his words. Present time. Izuku and John were both writing down ideas to upgrade their web shooters while Shoto was reading manga, Denki and Kirishima were studying, along with Ren while Nora was sleeping. Izuku took multiple glances at Team Rwby who were playing a board game which Yang was currently dominating, also noticing the looks Izuku was giving them and gave a look of her own. If I play my cards right, I think I can get into Izuku's heart in record time. Yang thought to herself and smiled before continuing to clean her friends and Ruby's clocks before being interrupted by a third party. Salutations. The sudden voice made Kirishima panic and jumped into Denki's arms out of shock. Oh, hey Penny. Rwby said with a smile as Team RWBY and JNPR turned to see who the voice belonged to. What are you doing right now, Rwby? Penny asked as she titled her head in confusion. Playing a board game, which Yang has to be cheating, Weiss said in frustration as Yang just stuck her tongue out at Weiss. Hey, don't hate the player, hate the game, Weiss cream, Yang said as Penny then noticed Team IDS and focused on them. I don't think I've met those four, Penny said as she pointed at Izuku and his team before John stood up. Oh, they transferred from UA Penny, that's my best friend Izuku Midoriya, John said as Penny's eyes lit up as she shook Izuku's hand. You're the sensational best friend John's been talking about. Pleased to meet you, Penny said with lots of enthusiasm as to Izuku's surprise, his spider sense went off. My spider sense is going off. That can't be right, she seems like the farthest thing from a threat. Strange. Izuku thought to himself as his and Penny's handshake wrapped up. Nice to meet you, Penny, Izuku said as he motioned to his team. I'm Ejiro Kirishima. Denki Kaminari. Did you fall on your head a time or two as a child? Shoto asked as Denki and Kirishima both elbowed the dual-haired boy and shot him a not cool look. I'm Shoto Todoroki, Shoto said as Izuku just face-palmed at Shoto's lack of awareness of most social cues due to his shitty upbringing. I really need to give Endeavor an atomic wedge for what he did to Shoto, Izuku thought to himself as they then noticed Sun Wukong walking towards him along with some dude with blue hair. Sup guys? Oh, hey Sunday, Rwby said as Shoto, Denki and Kirishima all looked confused why Sun's shirt was open. It's not that hot today, is it? Shoto asked as Denki and Kirishima both shook their heads before checking the temperature. Rwby Blake Yam. Ice Queen. Why does everyone keep calling me that? Weiss said as she pouted and crossed her arms. I think that's a good name, Weiss. True, you'll have to do some work to get people to come around, but I'm sure you can pull it off, Izuku said as Weiss was speechless at Izuku's words before smiling at him. Thank you, Izuku, that means a lot to me, Weiss said as Young felt slightly jealous out of nowhere as Sun looked at Izuku. Don't think we've met, Sun Wukong. Izuku Midoriya, just transferred from UA, Izuku said as he and the monkey boy shook hands before Izuku introduced his team to Sun. Have we met before? You look kinda familiar, Sun inquired as Izuku just chuckled and laughed the comment off. I just have one of those faces, you know? Izuku said as he saw Penny very close to his face. I disagree. You have a very distinct face and appearance, Izuku. I would most certainly have your face ingrained into my memory, Penny said as Izuku was a bit confused and taken aback by Penny's personality. Ah, thanks, Izuku said, being a bit uncomfortable with Penny up in his personal space. Anyway, I haven't had the chance to formally introduce you guys to my old friend Neptune. Aren't libraries meant for reading? Thank you, Ren said as he threw his hands up in the air while Nora shot up with pancakes on the mind. Shut up, don't be a nerd. Gay, 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 gay. Intellectual, okay? Thank you, Neptune said as Izuku just shook his head while rolling his eyes. Just own it, pal, no use trying to enter needless arguments. It's like trying to convince your parents they're wrong, it's not worth it, Izuku said, getting so laughs from the guys and girls. So Neptune, where are you from? Weiss asked as Neptune walked up to her. Haven. Though I haven't caught your name, Snow Angel, Neptune said as Weiss backed up bit, looking slightly uncomfortable. I'm Weiss. she said as Shoto, Denki, and Kirishima all face-palmed at what they just saw. Okay, there's smooth, not smooth, and then there's whatever the hell that was, Kirishima remarked. And I thought I had crappy luck with women, Denki said, feeling a whole lot better about his self-confidence. I think we found the champion of fumble right there, fellas, Shoto said as Sun slapped Neptune over the head. Sorry about him. Apparently he never got past the always have girls on the brain stage of puberty, Sun said as he sat beside Shoto, Denki, and Kirishima as he pulled something from his pocket. Check this out, I got an autograph from the Scarlet Spider. Isn't that awesome? Sun said with enthusiasm, completely unaware of the fact the Scarlet Spider is currently in the same room as him. Hell yeah it is. That guy is awesome, cool and manly, Kirishima said as he shot John a subtle look. I don't get what's so cool about a guy running around in red and blue tights, Neptune remarked as Izuku just laughed. Kind of rich coming from you, Mr. Red Jacket and blue hair. Like come on, was your barber stoned out of their mind last time you got your hair cut? Izuku asked, which got the others laughing. Hey, I'll have you know I cut my own hair, Neptune said as Izuku kept on laughing. Ha ha ha, that explains a lot. And are those just normal goggles on your head? I've seen high-tech specs before, and that definitely ain't a chief, Izuku said as they kept on laughing, Weiss especially. He has a point, dude, you do look dumb, Sun quipped as Neptune held his head down. Buck with one Spider-Man, you buck with us both, John thought to himself as Penny got up in Shoto's face. What happened to your face? It is a birthmark? Penny asked as Shoto backed up a bit. No, it's not. It's not. Is it a scar then? It looks really cool, Penny said before continuing to ask Shoto questions he wasn't comfortable answering as he got up and left. Did I say something wrong? Penny asked, feeling sad. Not really, let's just say his scar is a sore sport and leave it at that. Chapter 6, Calm Before the Storm. How come I'm the one carrying all this crap to our room? You're more ripped than all three of us combined, Kirishima asked as he was carrying some things to the dorms while Izuku, Denki, and Shoto were walking behind him. It's simple really. In our little team of pure-hearted heroes with nothing to lose, I'm the smart, brave, and intelligent leader, Kaminari's the lovable goof who's smarter than he thinks, Todoroki is the quiet and aloof one who tries and fails to understand most social cues. Izuku said as Shoto had an offended look on his face, yet he knew Izuku had a point in his observation. So by default, that leaves you as the muscle, Izuku said as Kirishima opened the door while still holding the things in his arms. We walk any farther and I might end up being the torn muscle, Kirishima said before they headed into their room as he placed the things he was carrying down. Remind me to give Ruby her board game when we're finished with this, Izuku said as he pulled some tools out from the box as the four boys started working on turning their beds into proper and safe bunk beds, which they managed to finish in just under an hour. That was easier than I thought it'd be, especially for the first time, Denki said as Izuku placed up 2 ladders against the bunk beds. Dibs on the top bunks, Denki and Kirishima said in unison as Izuku just chuckled as they settled down for the day. It is so refreshing to not want to rip my ears off during classes, Genki said as all four all quickly that the lack of bakuho was definitely a major improvement. Though it does suck we have to put up with a more tamed version of that mutt, what's his name again? Isn't it cardboard or something? Kirishima said as Izuku couldn't help laughing at his remark. Seems like there's at least always one asshole who thinks they are better than everyone else, Izuku complained as he laid down on his bunk. Least everyone here can clearly see that cardboard is a complete asshole. How most of our old classmates couldn't see Bakugo was an asshole, and a borderline villain is beyond me, even I saw it right off the bat, Denki said as the others just shrugged their shoulders. Either sheer stupidity, fear, they really just didn't care, or all three of those things, Kirishima said as Izuku nodded his head in agreement. It's only a matter of time before all those morons realize how much of an irredeemable monster that blonde mutt is, Izuku said as Denki, Shoto, and Kirishima all raised an eyebrow over what Izuku said. Granted, they already knew Izuku did not like Bakugo one bit, but they weren't expecting him to say Bakugo's a monster, though before Izuku could elaborate on what he meant, his spider sense kicked into overdrive as Izuku held his head and dropped to his knees. Whoa, 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 whoa! Are you alright? Kirishima said as the three boys all shot up onto their feet, not knowing what they should do. Any ideas, guy? Denki asked while trying not to immediately panic. Looks like he has a headache. Probably should make some ice. Shoto said as Kirishima just face-palmed. You don't just get sudden intense headaches out of nowhere, Kirishima said as they saw Denki fanning Izuku with his hands. Dude, what are you doing? Shoto asked, confused to what he was looking at. What else do it look like? I'm fanning him, Denki said as he kept fanning Izuku. Bro, what is this, Sandlot? How's that going to help whatever is happening? Kirishima asked. I don't see you guys coming up with any other ideas, Denki said as Shoto and Kirishima shrugged their shoulders before also fanning Izuku, as Izuku's little freakout stopped as he got back up. Dude, are you alright? What was that all about? Kirishima said as he lightly shook Izuku out of sheer concern. My spider sense, it went off the rails, Izuku said as his teammates were rather confused by what that was supposed to mean. Your spider sense went off the rails? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Shoto asked as Izuku sat down while holding his head. Whenever spider sense goes off, me and John feel a tingle in the back of our skulls, and the tingle's intensity increases depending on the threat we're being warned about, Izuku explained as the three were shocked to learn about this. Has it ever gone crazy like that before? Kirishima asked as Izuku stood up. Only once, when John and I dealt with a fauna serial killer a year and a half ago, Izuku said as he grabbed Ruby's board game and went to return it to her, as he headed towards Team Ruby's dorm, catching a glimpse of Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald a little ways away walking away from Ruby, before the little Rose nearly ran into Izuku. Oh, sorry about that, Izuku, Ruby said as she rubbed the back of her head with a sheepish look on her face, before Izuku gave Ruby her board game, which made the girl smile as she took it back. Oh, thank you, Izuku. You really saved me the trip, even with my semblance and all, Ruby said as Izuku just smiled at her. Don't mention it, Ruby. Just doing the right thing, that's all, Izuku said as Ruby faintly blushed seeing Izuku's smile. By the way, who were those three I saw you talking to not too long ago? Izuku asked as Ruby's blush faded as she looked Izuku in the eye. Oh, they're upperclassmen from Haven, Ruby explained as Izuku didn't feel at ease, having a feeling those Ruby had talked to had something to do with his spider sense going off the rails before suddenly finding himself being dragged by Ruby to her team's dorm. Whoa, what's the big idea, Ruby? Izuku asked as Ruby knocked on JNPR's door, as John answered much to Ruby's delight as she dragged the two web slingers into her room, quickly followed by Izuku and John's teammates. Yo, what's going on here, Ruby? John asked as Ruby explained her and her team's plans to Izuku, John, and the others. So, let's see if I got this right. You girls want to go a bit rogue and go after Torchwick and the White Fan because you think they are planning something massive, and you think me and John will be good fits for this little escapade due to our experience and skills. Did I miss anything? Izuku asked as Team Ruby shook their heads no. Nope, you pretty much have everything nailed down there, you handsome spider, Yang said as Izuku chuckled at Yang's compliment before looking at John for a moment before looking back at Team Ruby. We're in, John and Izuku both said as the four girls were taken aback by their sudden response as the two looked back at their teammates. You guys in too? John asked as they took a moment to think before coming to their decision. What the hell, why not? Shoto said as Denki and Kirishima both nodded their heads on agreement. Another chance to take on criminals as a team and friends, sign me the hell up, Kirishima said with lots of enthusiasm. And this time, no Bakugo to scream our ears off, Denki said with a goofy smile on his face. Guess it could be fun. Plus, someone will have to watch your backs, Ren said as he and John fist bumped while Nora held her hammer with a rather darkly excited grin on her face. I see no reason to turn our backs on innocent people, Pira said with a smile. Right. We'll meet up here tomorrow after class and do this thing, agreed? Ruby asked as they all were in agreement. Meanwhile, Ashbin and Ironwood were in the middle of having a conversation which ended up having the general place 2 news reports about Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider on the headmaster's desk. "What exactly are you trying to get at here, James?" Ashbin asked as he took a sip of his drink. "Oz, I don't think you really understand how dangerous these two are. Remember, Spider-Man single-handedly killed trained and experienced villains," Ironwood said as Ashbin couldn't help but chuckle at what he just heard. "Calling the League of Villains trained and experienced is being incredibly generous, James. All they truly are nothing but hypocrites who think they are justified causing pain and suffering upon others because they were wronged them, and All for One was nothing more than a lonely and pitiful excuse of a man," Ashbin said, being very harsh and honest in his assessment of the League of Villains, and All for One in particular. "That's beside the point. Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider in the grand scheme of things are special. In just 3 years, those two have done much more than most fully trained pro-heroes, huntsmen and huntresses have done in recent years," Ironwood stated as Ashbin raised an eyebrow at what the Tin Man had said. "Yes, I'll admit that is quite the impressive feat, but what is your point?" Ashbin asked, having some idea of what Ironwood was getting at, but wasn't exactly liking where it was going. "Well, just imagine the medical advancements that could be with their blood, or even," Ironwood said, but before he could continue explaining his point, Ashbin shot up from his seat. "If you're trying to insist on weaponsing their blood in order to create super soldiers, you can forget about it, James. It is their responsibility to use their powers for the good of others, and I'm sure they would feel repulsed by the possibility of someone gaining their powers who ends up using it for their own selfish desires," Ashbin sternly said before regaining his usual demeanor and sitting back down. "Ashbin, I don't want to take their blood from them by force. I genuinely want to use it to further benefit all life on the planet," Ironwood elaborated, not wanting Ashbin to think he would go as low as Shakshni. "You could have all the good intentions in the world, but even then I highly doubt they'd give samples of their blood over to Atlas of all kingdoms," Ashbin said calmly, fully being aware of the fact Izuku and John would both rather hang up their masks than ever help Atlas. "That's a bit harsh. I will admit Atlas has more than its fair share of issues, but corruption, greed, discrimination, slavery, abuse, mistreatment of workers, need I go on, James?" Ashbin asked as Ironwood just sighed, knowing that Ashbin had a point. "I suggest you get your own kingdom in order before things go to hell instead worrying about 2 good-hearted people you don't even know," Ashbin said, stopping the conversation before it could continue, much to the headmaster's joy, not wanting to enter another useless debate about Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider hiding behind masks, mostly due to Ashbin's intense dislike of the HPSC. Ashbin has been incredibly vocal about the HPSC for a good amount of time, especially due to not seeming to fix their issue of being understaffed, grooming people into becoming weapons, and their intense corruption, especially after the mess with Lady Nagant killing the previous president due to her declining mental health. Though Ashbin managed to interfere in using his position on Vale's council to take matters into his own hands, which included getting Nagant a lot of much-needed therapy, and due to this act, Nagant became indebted to Ashbin for helping her, and told him everything the HPSC put her through, which more or less strengthened Ashbin's case, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, he had to keep that on the back burner until recently. And due to the death of All for One, the HPSC had no excuse to hide behind to excuse their actions, much to Ashbin's delight as the door to his office opened as the 2 men saw who entered. "Could you give us a minute, James?" Ashbin asked as Ironwood nodded his head and left the office. "Not like you to come suddenly unannounced, Kana. Something wrong?" Ashbin asked the purple-eyed sniper who had an uneasy look on her face. "Professor, I looked into what Crow said, and it's 100% confirmed," Kana said as Ashbin got up from his chair and leaned against the window. "Damn it, it seems like we have no choice but to move ahead of schedule," Ashbin said gloomy as he readjusted his glasses. "Are you sure that's a good idea, sir? With the Tile Festival coming up, is rushing ahead the best course of action? All things considered, Kana, we might not have much of a choice. But we shouldn't have to worry. I have faith in Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider." Chapter 7. A Minor Hiccup. "Finally, I thought that class was going to last forever," Blake said as all 3 teams were in Team Ruby's dorm room after changing outfits. That old fossil really likes to hear himself talk. I swear, Port would be extremely easy to beat if he were evil. Just wait until he starts talking, then go for the takedown. John remarked as he finished priming his web shooters before covering them with his sleeves. It's always when they start monologuing. You'd think bad guys would be smart enough to realize that going on about their entire plan when they aren't in a position of victory is a very bad idea. Oh well, makes it easier for us, Izuku said as he got a good look at the outfits Yang and Weiss were wearing. Man, you two look great, Izuku said, making the blonde brawler just smile, while Weiss had a faint blush on her face before smiling at Izuku's compliment. Alrighty everyone, today's the day, Rwby said with lots of excitement as she got down from her bunk while John and Izuku were just looking at their bunk beds. Quick question, what are we looking at exactly? Izuku asked as he pointed at the very unsafe bunk beds that Team Rwby had put together. Our bunk beds, what else would they be? Blake asked as Izuku, Shoto, Denki and Kirishima all looked at each with deadpan looks. Did you girls happen to binge Jackass or something before putting that together? Because those are extremely not safe, Denki said while in absolute shock that the beds haven't caved in yet. Oh, Ida would definitely have a panic attack if he saw this, Kirishima said, being incredibly honest with the girls. Well, in our defense, we didn't have much to work with. That and we haven't done something like that before, Rwby admitted with a sheepish look on her face. Well, no worries since we just put our bunk beds together properly, and we still have supplies left so we can fix up your bed after this, Izuku said with a smile as Rwby hugged and thanked Izuku for his offer, causing some jealous within Yang, Blake and Weiss before Rwby got back on track. Anyway, we all remember our assigned roles, right? Rwby asked as everyone present all nodded their heads. You and I are heading to the CCT to check the SHI records for any other dust robberies and inconsistencies. Hopefully it should go off without a hitch, seeing as I'm in the family, Weiss said as Rwby simply nodded. The White Fang hold regular faction meetings to hand out orders and find new recruits. I should be able to find out what they're planning if I can get in, Blake said as she looked at John and Rin. I'll be watching in the rafters in case things go south really fast while Rin will be on the ground, John said before placing his hand on Rin's shoulder. My semblance allows me to turn invisible in others when they are in close proximity to me as well as masking negative emotions, so I should be able to sneak Blake inside without any issue, Rin said calmly before Nora shot up in excitement. While me, Pira, Piku, Rocky and Freezy Flame will be nearby as the backup in case things go to shit, Nora said as Denki, Shoto and Kirishima all looked at each while processing Nora's nicknames for them before just rolling with it. I know a guy on the shady side of town that usually knows everything going on in Vale. Getting information out of him won't be too difficult, and I'll have Izuku to keep me company, Yang said as she winked at Izuku, making Izuku chuckle and wink back at her. Right, we'll all meet up tonight near Yang and go over everything we find. Let's do this, Rwby said as Izuku and John handed the others communicators to make communicating much easier as they split into their assigned groups, while Yang led Izuku to where she had her motorcycle. Whoa, sweet ride, Izuku said as Yang put on her helmet before the two got on her bike. Sorry I don't have a helmet for you to wear, don't really have many people ride with me other than Rwby. And I doubt her helmet would fit you, Yang said as she started up her motorcycle. Don't worry about me. I've been hit by a lot over the years so I know my pain tolerance well. Besides, my spider sense should help avoiding any accidents, Izuku said as Yang smiled as the two took off on her motorcycle. Meanwhile, Ashbin was in his office, trying to think about how he should proceed with things when he heard Glinda speak up. You do know that won't stop them, right? Glinda asked as Ashbin turned around in his chair to look at her. Telling Team Rwby not to go after Torchwick, that will not stop them from doing it, Glinda said with a tone of concern in her voice. I understand your concern, Glinda, but this is far from the first time students have taken matters into their own hands. But this is different from all other circumstances, Professor. Not only is Salem starting to make her move, but also Torchwick working with the White Fang faction under the command of Adam Taurus just makes things even more potential worse for everyone, and that's not even mentioning the mess at UA, Glinda said as Ashbin got up while thinking about his response. We just need to have faith in our students, Glinda, especially in Izuku and John. I have no doubts those two will be a positive influence on their peers. Besides, no disrespect to Nizu, but it seems like he's dropped the ball with several of his new students," Ashbin said as he led Glinda to his desk before pulling up files on several Udata students. "I found information on Katsuki Bakugo, the student that was chained up during the sports festival ceremony, and look at this: intense anger issues, a massive inferiority and superiority complex, an ego bigger than the size of the planet, refuses to think ahead and adapt. An absolute refusal to work with each others and a need to always yell and attempt to assault others. It's honestly a miracle he hasn't been expelled yet." Ashbin laid out to Glinda, who was in absolute shock to what she just heard. "I think I owe Miss Xiaolong an apology. Least she knows when she's overwhelmed, actually gets along with others and cares about the people around her," Glinda said as Ashbin then noticed something interesting. "Oh, it seems like Mr. Bakugo went to the same schools as Izuku and John," Ashbin said as he and Glinda both looked at each other, both having an idea that Izuku and John have some bad blood with Katsuki. Meanwhile, after a while of driving, Yang and Izuku had made it to their destination as Yang parked her bike and took off her helmet. "Come on, he's in there," Yang said as she and Izuku got off her bike, as Izuku couldn't help but laugh a bit when he saw where they were. "PTFFFFFFF, you're kidding. Those clowns, for real? They'll help us get anything on Torchwick?" Izuku asked while laughing as Yang looked at him surprised. "You've been here before?" the blonde brawler asked, to which Izuku answered her question with a head nod. "Me and John have found ourselves here looking for info a good many times. And by looking, I might actually mean just stand there very menacingly and wait for them to tell us what we want to know," Izuku explained as Yang resisted the urge to laugh while Izuku checked to see the coast was clear before quickly going into an alleyway to don Venom before heading back over to Yang. "Never hurts to be careful," Izuku remarked as they went to head inside, only to have a scene be caused as they were trying to be kept out of the bar. "You'd think they'd realize by now that nothing can withstand my punches," Izuku quipped as he and Yang both punched the door open before walking in. "Guess who's back?" Yang said with a smile as the henchmen all went to get their guns out, only to stop upon seeing Spider-Man right beside her. "Have you bozos really forgotten that guns are more or less useless against me?" Izuku quipped as the bar's owner Junior walked through the crowd and immediately froze up seeing both Yang and Spider-Man. "Blondie, you're here, was Spider-Man. Why?" "You still owe me a drink, and we need to talk," Yang said as she grabbed Junior's arm and drags him to the bar while Izuku followed her. "Man, that woman keeps on surprising me." Meanwhile, Blake, John and the others had arrived at a White Fang faction meeting as Blake was looking around the corner they were hiding behind. "We're here," Blake whispered as she looked back at the others. "We all remember the plan, right?" John asked as they all nodded their heads before he jumped to the rooftops and changed into his scarlet spider suit as Ren and Blake started walking towards the meeting. "I don't understand. If they think what they're doing is the right thing to do, why bother hiding who they are?" Ren asked Blake, wondering why so many of the White Fang members he saw were wearing masks. "As a symbol. Humanity wanted to deem us as monsters, so we decided to don the masks of monsters," Blake explained to Ren. "Grim masks, that is pretty dark." "So was the one who started it," Blake said as the color from her and Ren began to fade before they were completely invisible as they headed inside the meeting area, while John snuck in through an entrance on the roof as he climbed on the ceiling while maintaining his cover. After a moment, John, Ren and Blake saw Roman show himself, much to the surprise of all the faunas there as the three stayed quiet while listening to what Roman had to say. "Now I'll be the first to admit, humans can really suck, like myself for example. So I completely understand why you'd all like to see us all locked away, or better yet killed. But I'd like to point out that we all have one thing in common, the reason for our lot in life. The ones in control, the rotten humans that run our kingdoms. Government, military, and even the schools, it's because of them you're all treated as garbage. They're all pests that need to be taken care of, and I just so happen to have the proper equipment," Roman said before snapping his fingers, revealing a paladin behind a curtain. "Oh, that's not good," Ren whispered to Blake as they were both shocked. "That's an understatement," Blake whispered back to Rin. The hell, a paladin? Something is definitely up here. Roman would never, ever steal from the military. John thought to himself. As some of you may have heard, this right here is Atlas' newest defense against all the scary things in the world. And thanks to my employer, we've managed to snag a few before they hit the shelves. Now many of your brothers have already moved down to our new operation in the southeast. If you'd rather stay within the city, that's fine, but if you're truly ready to fight for what you believe in, this is the arsenal I can provide you. Any questions? Roman asked as the applause was more than enough to answer his question. That explains it. Roman's working for someone. But who could have gotten Roman to do their dirty work? John wondered to himself as someone then walked out, much to John and Blake's shock. Blake, you know who that is? Ren whispered to Blake, taking note of her sudden shock and fear. TT, that's my old mentor Adam Taurus, and the one who's responsible for all the violence being caused by his side of the White Fang. Blake whispered to Rin, trying to keep it together. And soon, my brothers and sisters, we will have the heads of Spider-Man and the Scarlet Spider, along with all those who wronged us, Adam said, which got a dirty look from Roman. Yeah, think again, you loony. Back with Izuku and Yang. So, Roman hired your boys to help him, but he dropped them on short notice, Izuku asked Junior while Yang was finishing her drink. Yes, on very short notice, I might add. Bastard didn't even give me a reason why, Junior explained as Izuku took this information in. That's odd, Roman would never drop hired help out of the blue like that without a valid reason, Izuku thought to himself while trying to think of an answer to this. Honestly, I don't care that I'm not working for him anyway, although it's a pain that I'm not getting that cut of the dust he promised. Hearing that from the older man piqued Izuku and Yang's curiosity. You have any idea how much dust he stole? Yang asked, hoping to get some kind of an estimation. A lot, and I mean a lot. Though I have no idea what he'll need all that dust for, Junior explained as Izuku and Yang thanked him for the info, with Izuku joking about how he better not get into trouble as he and Yang got up and started to leave, with Izuku giving a little smile and nod to the Malachite twins before they left. So, what's your angle? Yang asked as Izuku grabbed her by the waist and webbed Sling to a nearby rooftop as his mask retracted. Well, I can say for certain that Roman has to be working for someone. He would never drop hired help out of the blue like that or go back on his word. Though the better question is who could have gotten Roman to work for them. Izuku laid out while Yang was still a bit in shock of suddenly being on a roof. Well, must be someone dangerous if they're able to make Torchwick their errand boy, Yang joked as Izuku continued to think. Though now I wonder what Roman and the White Fang need all that dust for. Maybe to start a black market? Izuku suggested while Yang took a moment to think. Or maybe they're planning on causing a massive explosion somewhere, Yang suggested before the two looked at each other with horrified expressions on their faces. Or maybe they're gathering enough dust to supply an army, Izuku and Yang both said in unison. Well, whatever the reason, it cannot be good, Yang said as their communicators started beeping as they answered it to hear John's voice. John, what's up? Bad news, you two. Roman's somehow gotten his hands on a paladin, John said in a hushed tone as Izuku and Yang were both shocked. Those things should still be in the prototype stages. How did Roman get one of them and why? Izuku asked his best friend/partner. Why, I have no idea. But Roman mentioned something about an employer, John explained as Yang looked up to Izuku. You called it Izuku. Well, now what do? We can't just let a prototype mech be out in the wild, and in the White Fang's hands no less, Yang asked as Izuku and John thought about their next move. Back with John. I have no idea. We can't exactly destroy the thing without getting caught, John said as he was thinking of multiple different ways to proceed. Once all these so-called heroes, huntsmen and huntresses are all out of the way, we will finally have our revolution, Adam shouted out as John, Blake and Ren all had enough as John dropped from the ceiling, shocking everyone there. You! Adam growled upon seeing John while Roman couldn't help but laugh. Now there is a hero who is actually worth a damn, Roman said as John couldn't help but smile under his mask. Ah, you flatter me, Roman, John said as he looked at the pink and brown-haired woman nearby Roman. Miss you at the party at the docks, Neo. What kept you? John asked as Neo wrote down a message on her phone and showed it to John. I was sick with a cold for the past few weeks. Oh, yeah, catching cold really sucks. Got one once when I was 11 or so, knocked me on my ass for a good bit. John joked, getting a chuckle out of Roman and Neo. Will you two stop and Bucking get his annoying ass? Adam yelled before John webbed his mouth shut. Hey, just because we're enemies doesn't mean we can't have a civilized conversation like grown up. Anyways, never thought you'd yank a Paladin there, Roman. Trust me, SS, wasn't my idea. I was given this thing right out of the blue by my employer. Roman explained as John just nodded his head. I see, now then, let's dance. Chapter 8, Painting the Town Part 1. Give it up, Scarlet Spider, you're completely surrounded. Adam shouted as John just smirked underneath his mask. I like those odds, John said as Roman and Neo both face-palmed at what Adam just said. You just jinxed it, you just had to run your mouth, Roman said while Neo was just shaking her head as John double-tapped his communicator to let Izuku, Yang, Weiss and Rwby know where they are as Pira, Nora, Shoto, Genki and Kirishima all barged their way inside. Wow, didn't know you plan on making this a party, Roman joked as John did a cheeky little head tilt. Pays to have good friends, John quipped as Ren and Blake reappeared while aiming their weapons at Adam, who immediately locked his eyes on Blake. Hello, my darling. The room completely fell silent as John and the others were looking at Blake in confusion and concern, while Roman looked at Adam. Yeah, I'm going to need context here, a lot of context, Roman asked, hoping to God this isn't going where he thought it was before looking at Neo to see the message she wrote. Probably would still be better than Twilight. Neo, it doesn't take that much effort to be a better experience than Twilight, Roman remarked. Blake, were you in him? Pira asked, still in shock to what they just heard Adam say as Blake quickly shook her head. It's complicated. I thought what Adam was doing was best for everyone, before I realized the truth, Blake said as Adam had his hands on his weapon, ready to strike at the heroes. You have no right to critique my actions, Blake, especially when you haven't been through what most of us have, Princess. After all, you barely made time for the cause, Adam said with a hint of venom in his voice while John and the others were confused why Adam referred to Blake as a princess. Think we should stop him from monologuing? No, Neo, let him see for himself, Roman said as Neo just shrugged her shoulders. Well, excuse me for wanting to have an actual life and spend time with my own mother. Blake snapped back at Adam while John was waiting for Izuku to show up so the fun could really get going. Your mother is a fool, just like your father was. I'm doing what both he and Sienna are cowards for not doing, putting humanity right where they belong, Adam shouted as John shot webs at him before pulling him right to him, and slammed Adam into the ground. You talk too much, that's our thing, John said as Adam's sword launched out of its sheath into John's chest, sending him back, but John quickly regained his footing as he flipped to the others. Right, forgot you can do that. Yoo-hoo? Excuse me. Everyone looked up as they all saw Izuku sticking to the ceiling. Can I come in this way, or do I have to Kool-Aid man my way in? Izuku asked before dropping down right beside John. Oh, this just keeps getting better and better, Roman remarked as Neo waved at Izuku, who just saluted back, while Adam was glaring at Izuku right before Yang punched a hole into the wall, showing Rwby and Weiss were beside her. Well, that's one way to make an entrance, Rwby said as the three walked in while getting their weapons ready, as all the faunas present were all glaring at Weiss. Let's kick some ass, people, Izuku shouted. Izuku used his venom blast on Nora, who used her semblance to channel the lightning through her before slamming her hammer into the ground, causing a good amount of the White Fang members to all trip up as John shot webs at two of them before swinging them around. Hope you guys don't have serious motion sickness, John quipped before slamming them into the ground as he flipped into the air, landing on a deer fauna's shoulder before jumping off and knocking her over. Izuku and Blake were both fighting together as Blake used her semblance to make multiple clones of herself, to trip up and confuse their opponents as Izuku used their confusion to their advantage while multiple White Fang members started dropping like flies. I figured they'd try a bit harder to fight me off," Izuku remarked, which got a chuckle from Blake as Izuku knocked out one white Fang member who tried sneaking up on him. "Nice try," Izuku quipped as Blake fired a few bullets at a few goons behind Izuku while they saw Pirai's shield bouncing off multiple white Fang goons, thanks to Pirai using her semblance. Denki and Kirishima were fighting off loads of goons alongside Weiss as Kirishima quickly made some makeshift cover out of a nearby shelf and some crates as they ducked behind the cover. "Damn, these guys really want you dead," Denki said to Weiss as Kirishima peeped over the cover before Denki blasted some electricity at several goons. "Well, when your father is a bigot who does whatever he wants and is willing to do whatever to make more money, it's kind of expected," Weiss said as she shot some ice balls at their attackers before getting back behind cover. "Reminds me of Bakugo, just minus the money and way more violent," Kirishima remarked as he saw Nora with her arms out towards several goons, making them confused before Nora spoke. "Nora time," Nora said as she spun around with her hammer, getting a good amount of goons down for the count while Ren and Yang were putting their hand-to-hand skills to good use, while Rwby used her semblance to move around and getting in quick attacks with crescent rows. "Man, she's got quick moves," Izuku said as he shot a web at a goon that tried sneaking up on Blake before continuing to kick ass and take names. "You think we should help?" Roman asked while looking at Neo, who was shaking her head no. "Yeah, figured that. Let karma bite them in the ass," Roman said as Adam jumped into the fight and tried to attack Weiss, only for Izuku to jump in front of him. "Not so fast, Hornhead," Izuku said before kicking Adam into the wall as he struggled to get back up. "I can't wait to stain that black suit of yours red," Adam said while grabbing his sword while Izuku faked being scared. "I can just feel the edge in the air," Izuku joked as Adam started attacking Izuku, slashing at him with his blade only for Izuku to keep dodging each strike Adam tried landing on him, while Adam blocked each punch Izuku threw at him using his blade. "You're not really good at forward planning, are you?" Izuku asked as Adam tried to stab him in the leg, only for Izuku to sweep his legs, which caused Adam to fall backwards, but he quickly got back up. "Shut up, this is the only way to get what is best for all the faunus," Adam shouted as Izuku grabbed his sword while Adam tried his best to move his blade, only to find himself getting punched in the back by Yang. "Well, let me ask you this, Bullhead, is this really about equality for the faunus or is this all about you?" Yang asked as Adam tried to slash at Yang, though she managed to dodge Adam's attack before Izuku threw him into the wall. Suddenly Izuku and John's spider senses went off as they looked at the roof before looking at the others. "Everyone move!" the two said in sync as everyone moved out of the way as a massive leg crashed through the ceiling. "What the hell just happened?" Weiss asked out of shock as Izuku and John just face-palmed, knowing who it was. Why are you here?" John asked as they saw Empty Lady's face look through the hole she just made. "The hell are you two lunatics doing here?" Empty Lady asked, being disgusted seeing Spider-Man while John clenched his fist. "Them? You're the crazy hitch who smashed a hole into the ceiling that could have killed people in here," Yang shouted at the giantess hero as Ren saw Adam getting in the Paladin. "Guys, new problem!" Ren yelled out as Adam got inside the Paladin against what Roman wanted as Empty Lady poked her head inside, only to be met with a rocket to the face, causing her lots of pain as she stumbled backwards. "You and your friends are next, Blake!" Adam shouted as he fired another rocket at the group, only for Rwby to shoot it with a well-placed shot, causing an explosion that pushed them back as Adam tore open a hole in the way as he made his way outside as the kids quickly followed after him. Chapter 9, Painting the Town Part 2. "Anyone have any ideas?" Ren asked as Izuku and John shot webs at the Paladin's legs to prevent Adam from advancing any further. "Stop Adam before he can cause any more unnecessary damage and get innocent people killed," Izuku said as Shoto blasted some ice at the Paladin to further slow it down. "And what about the massive bimbo in the area?" Yang asked while pointing at the still disoriented Empty Lady as Izuku and John looked at her then back at Adam, quickly making up their minds. "Leave her, we have bigger problems to worry about right now," John said before the Paladin fired a rocket at Pyrrha, but John shot a web at Pyrrha and pulled her out of the way as Izuku used tendrils to redirect the rocket back at the Paladin. "Gah! You'll pay for that, bug!" Adam yelled as the Paladin started shooting at the group using its guns, but they all dodged the bullets with ease. You do know that hunk of crap isn't even yours, right? Izuku asked with a joking tone in his voice, making Adam try to punch Izuku, but Pyrrha used her semblance to freeze the Paladin's arm as Adam tried to free the arm from Pyrrha's hold. Rwby, help get all nearby people out of the crossfire, John said as Rwby used her semblance to help get all the innocent people out of the way while Izuku and John pulled the Paladin down, before Weiss used her glyphs to trap the Paladin's legs. All talk, nothing else, Izuku said as they slowly approached the Paladin to drag Adam out of it, before Izuku and John's spider senses went off as they tackled the others away as the arm tried to swipe them away before Adam breaks the ice restraining the Paladin's legs. Yeah, I should have known it wouldn't be that easy, Yang said as Adam knocked most of them back with another swing from the Paladin's arm, before grabbing Weiss. Not so strong now that you're not an Atlas anymore, aren't you, Ice Hitch? Adam asked with a smug grin and a venomous tone in his voice while glaring at the white-haired heiress. I'm stronger than you could possibly imagine, Weiss said with her own smirk as Rwby started firing at the Paladin, much to Adam's annoyance as he turned around, which gave John the chance to use his webs to free Weiss from the Paladin's grasp as Izuku caught her as she fell, and moved her to safety. You alright? Izuku asked while Weiss had a faint blush on her face as Izuku placed her back on the ground. Yeah, thanks for catching me, Weiss said as Izuku nodded while John jumped onto the Paladin's cockpit and started punching it, causing it and Adam to get disoriented as he tried to use this to his advantage and hit John. Only for him to jump off and made Adam hit the mech, which made him more pissed off as he just barely managed to sweat John out of the air. John quickly got back up as he stretched his back before turning back to the mech as Adam threw a punch at John, who quickly responded with a punch of his own. Adam was shocked that John was able to hold back the punch as Izuku climbed onto the Paladin's back, using his Venom Blast to send a sudden volt of electricity through the mech, which threw things out of whack. Adam was panicking as he quickly tried to reboot the systems as he turned and saw a hole being torn, before quickly seeing it go wide open as Izuku slipped in. Enough room for one more? Izuku asked as Adam was about to attack him when suddenly Empty Lady kicked the Paladin, throwing it off balance, and caused Izuku to fall out through the back entrance he just ripped open. Not so tough with that mech now, huh, you filthy animal? Empty Lady asked as she tried to grab Adam and the Paladin before getting shot in the face, causing her to stumble back. Great, just great, Izuku complained over getting screwed over by Empty Lady as Ren helped him back up. Any ideas? Ren asked, curious about how to now go about things. I don't really know how to force Empty Lady to prematurely change back to normal size. Then again, that would also make her an easy target, Izuku said before looking at the path to the freeway, thinking about their next move when suddenly the Paladin went flying over the two, before looking to see who did it as everyone was shocked to see who it was. Hope I'm not interrupting. No way, I can't believe it, Blake said while Nora was in pure shock. It's really him, Rwby said with lots of excitement in her voice while John and Izuku had big smiles under their masks. I can't believe I'm seeing him in person, Weiss said while being in the same shock as Nora. It's Mr. Incredible, Denki and Kirishima both said in shock and all while Adam was now more pissed off than before. Now then, how about you get out of the mech before things get too messy? Mr. Incredible asked as Adam started shooting at him, only for the shoots to have no effect on the blonde man. How did you think that was going to go? The blonde man in red asked before decking the Paladin, sending it flying back as Izuku and John ran up beside him. Talk about great timing, Izuku said as they focused all the stole mech. Any ideas? Mr. Incredible asked the two as Adam got back up. The ground underneath the freeway, only place I can think of where innocent people aren't in the crossfire, Izuku said as Rwby fired more shots at the Paladin. Quick thinking, kid, at least you have thinking to avoid property damage, unlike some people, Mr. Incredible said while glaring at Empty Lady as all of them forced Adam towards the freeway before knocking him off, making him fall towards the ground under the freeway. Grrrr, I'll destroy you fools for getting in my way, Adam yelled out in anger and frustration. Like we'll be afraid of someone hiding in a stolen mech suit, Izuku joked. Freeze or burn, Rwby shouted as Weiss froze the ground while Yang jumped into the air before punching the ice, causing mist to cover the area which hindered Adam's vision as he started looking around for the heroes. Adam then saw Rwby flying towards him and delivered a slash at the Paladin's cockpit, causing the mech to stumble backwards. Checkmate! Rwby ordered at Weiss, and Blake started attacking the Paladin, putting their agility to good use while delivering strike after strike before Weiss stabbed the Paladin knee before jumping back as Adam shot rockets at her, and Weiss as they back-flipped away. Adam managed to get lucky and hit Weiss, but she used time dilation to speed up Blake, which let her quickly destroy the next round of rockets that Adam had fired as Izuku, Denki and Nora jumped in. Shock and awe! Izuku shouted as he and Denki channeled their electricity into Nora, supercharging her, which let her go to town on the Paladin's legs while Denki fired bolts of electricity at the mech and Izuku used Venom Blast and OFA charged punches that further added to the damage. Pyrrha launched Rin into the air using her shield as he started shooting the Paladin as she, John, Kirishima and Shoto rushed in and started getting into their own attacks, with Kirishima and Pyrrha going for the legs and John and Shoto attacking the upper half of the mech. John started punching the cockpit while Shoto shot fire and ice at the arms without hesitation, making Adam get more enraged when Shoto noticed the whole Izuku ripped in the back and fired a ice blast through it, which hit Adam right in the back. Ah! You'll pay for that, Endeavor's little hell spawn! Adam yelled out as he turned around to face Shoto, which quickly led to him going flying due to a punch from Mr. Incredible. Ha ha ha! Imagine all the praise I'll receive by killing you, Incredible! Adam gloated as he got up, not noticing the Paladin's legs were wobbly. By that, you actually mean infamy, right? Mr. Incredible asked as Adam rushed towards the man as the Paladin's arms changed to fists, as the two started throwing hands. He's just as strong as they say, Weiss said while Rwby tried her best not to geek out. Anyone else here prefer Mr. Incredible over Almight? Denki asked as Kirishima, John, Izuku, Yang, Pyrrha and Nora all nodded in agreement. No disrespect to Almight, but he usually just always punches his way through any and all situations while Mr. Incredible thinks before he acts, Weiss said as Izuku knew for a fact she was right. Plus he got married to Elastigirl, Yang chipped in. Stand still and let me tear you to pieces, Incredible! Adam yelled as the Paladin's fist slammed into the ground in order to hit Mr. Incredible, who just dodged with ease. Pal, I was more scared of my wife while she was pregnant, Mr. Incredible joked as he jumped up and punched one of the Paladin's arms off, as Rwby and Blake started attacking the legs, using their speed and agility to help as Yang jumped onto the Paladin's back and started going to town on it. Adam then backed up very fast and bashed Yang against a nearby pillar before punching her into the ground, though Yang smirked as she got back up. Please sir, can I have another? Yang said as Adam went to attack her again, though Yang catched the punch as her hair began to glow while her eyes turned red, before throwing her own punch which destroyed the Paladin's remaining arm. Yang then was kicked back as Blake threw Gamble's shroud to her as Yang started running around as Izuku and John shot webs at the Paladin, while Rwby shot ice bullets with help from Weiss in order to slow the mech before Yang then punched the Paladin right in the cockpit, which completely destroyed it as Adam tumbled out of the wreck. Adam got up and was about to attack when Yang fired a shot at him, which was blocked by Neo using her parasol, before Yang ran towards the two. Yang, wait! Izuku shouted as Yang punched Neo, only for her and Adam to shatter like glass, much to Yang's confusion as they saw Neo, Adam and Roman escaping in a bullhead. What the hell was that all about? Yang asked with lots of confusion. That would be Neo's semblance, illusions that everyone can see that shatter like glass when they break, Izuku explained as John nodded. Well, guess she made our plans fall apart, Weiss said with a joking tone in her voice as Rwby giggled while Yang wasn't amused. No, just no, Yang said. But you did it all the time, Weiss said, getting a little upset. There's a time and place for jokes. Was this not one of them? No, that just wasn't good, Yang said while Weiss pouted. Well, at least I'm trying, Weiss said as they saw Izuku and John walking up to Mr. Incredible. Isn't it a school night for you kids? Mr. Incredible joked as Izuku and John just hugged the man. Hey, I won't complain about getting help from my favorite uncle, John said while their friends were all in shock of what they just heard. Would you like a megaphone to announce that, John? Izuku joked as John just flipped him off. Dude, Mr. Incredible is your uncle? Ren asked in shock as John nodded his head. Yeah, cool, huh? John asked as they all nodded their heads as Mr. Incredible looked at Izuku's black suit. The black and white really suits you, Izuku. The blonde man in red said as Yang couldn't help but chuckle a bit while Ruby and Weiss asked for autographs, which Mr. Incredible just smiled and did just that. You kids get out of here. I'll take care of all the media mess, Mr. Incredible said as Izuku and the others left while he looked at the pieces of the destroyed Paladin. Whatever is going on here, it cannot be close to being good. The man of infinite strength thought to himself before making his way back towards higher ground, though he was quickly met with a pissed-off empty lady. I would have had that if you, those two lunatics and those random brats weren't in my way, empty lady said as Mr. Incredible was far from being amused. So that hole in the roof back where the fight first broke out, that wasn't you? Mr. Incredible asked while empty lady was taken aback by the man's question. That's not. Answer the question, was it not you who put a hole in that roof? Mr. Incredible asked as she reluctantly nodded her head. So, you have a problem with Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider being willing to kill if they have to, yet it's fine for you to crash through a roof and risk killing those who couldn't get out of the way? He asked as she looked offended. That's different, the White Fang are a bunch of terrorists, empty lady said as Mr. Incredible was still unimpressed. All for One was over 100 years old, and showed no signs of stopping his ways if he wasn't killed. And as heroes, it's our responsibility to do whatever it takes to defend innocent people, Mr. Incredible said before turning around and walking away. Chapter 10. Broken Pride and Brief History. Finally, things are finally getting back to how they're meant to be. Now that Deku is finally out of my bucking hair, I am back at my rightful place of being the best. Oh, those bucking dumbasses were so quick to believe me saying Deku tried to kill me. And to make it better, Ponytail and Four Eyes both bucked off to whatever hole Deku bailed to, so I have no one to get in my way of being the one hero. Bakugo's extremely arrogant thoughts were going through the roof since Izuku had left Udate, repairing and further inflating his ego to incredibly high proportions as Bakugo now believed that there was nothing that could stop him now. But how wrong he was. Shame that shitty hair and dunce face bailed with Deku, those bucking dumbasses were a bit useful. Oh well, guess I'll make do with the other extras, except the frog, emo, animal lover and the zombie since Deku corrupted them into thinking I'm the problem. Bakugo thought to himself as he grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge before heading to the common room to watch TV. And I just need to find a way to get the teachers off my back, otherwise I'm bucked, Bakugo thought as he sat down and started flicking through channels before stopping at a news report about the recent Paladin incident. TCH, faunus freaks. The world would be better off without those dirty animals, quirkless people and people with semblances, Bakugo thought with a smug and heartless grin on his face before hearing that Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider were involved. What? Bakugo screamed in anger hearing and seeing that Izuku was still getting the glory that he felt like belonged to him, despite the whole Kamino incident being public knowledge, which further pissed off Bakugo. But then he heard that Izuku had help from some students from Beacon as Bakugo's eyes widened as he remembered what John said to him during their last meeting. No. How the buck did Deku and Vomit Boy get into Beacon of all schools? They must have cheated their way in. Bakugo screamed internally, being extremely pissed off that Izuku and John were both off being successful, despite the fact they're at a different school, but Bakugo didn't care about that. No, I'm just overreacting. They have to be falling miserably and everyone is taking pity on them, that's all. Bakugo justified to himself, being unable to believe or accept that Izuku and John are doing very well for themselves. Meanwhile, Izuku and John were getting food from themselves and the others as they brought the food to the table they were sitting at, as Nora immediately started digging in. Who would have thought fighting bad guys works up an appetite? Nora joked as she continued eating her food as the others just smiled. You'd get used to it fast, Izuku said as he started eating himself while Ren looked at Blake with a curious look on his face. Hey Blake, why did Adam refer to you as princess back here? Ren asked, curious as to why Adam called Blake that while the others all looked curious to what they heard from Ren. Yeah, I wondered what's up with that. Didn't seem like it was a pet name, that and him calling you darling. John said as they waited to let Blake answer if she was comfortable with it. Well, I had it easier than most faunus growing up given where I was born, though that didn't stop me from wanting equality. Guess it's natural given that I was basically born into the white Fang. Blake explained as they looked at her and gave her their full attention. Plus the fact my father started it helped with my choice. Blake continued explaining. Oh, guess that explains why he called you princess. Seems like he was envious of you, Blake. Young said as Weiss nodded her head in agreement with her blonde teammate. Maybe he was, I don't really know. Adam never really told me about his past, very much his past, so that could be wrong. Blake said while looking down. I'm guessing Adam and your father had a disagreement about how to handle things? Pyrrha asked while Blake hesitated to answer her question. And not really, least not that I know of. My father passed away 5 years ago. That's why Adam said I didn't make enough time, because I wanted to spend time with my mother to help her grieve. Blake said with a sad expression as they felt sorry for her. I get how that feels, Blake. Me and Ruby's dad passed a few years ago too. It's been us, our moms and uncles since. Young said, which took them by surprise as Young and Rwby did some explaining. Oh, that makes sense, poly relationship. Nora said as they continued eating their food. Least you had good fathers. Mine couldn't give a damn about me, my sister, and our mother. Weiss said as Nora patted the Ice Queen on the back. I get how that feels, Weiss. My old man only saw me as a weapon, completely neglected my other siblings, which led to my oldest brother vanishing and is the main factor to my mother snapping. Shoto said as Denki patted Shoto's shoulder. Least you weren't abandoned by your mother, and have no idea if you have any living family. Nora said as Pyrrha and Rwby both patted the sad Nora on the back. Least you guys didn't have to watch your parents and everyone you've ever known getting ripped to pieces. Ren said while shaking a bit as John quickly hugged his shaking friend to ease his stress. Are me, John, Kirishima and Kaminari the only ones here to have a full and happy family? Izuku wondered to himself as John got up to get himself a drink as he quickly noticed a familiar face. Violet? John? The two quickly hugged each other with smiles on their faces. Pleasant surprise running into my favorite cousin here, John said as Violet just chuckled. Is Izuku here with you? Violet asked as John pointed at the table Izuku and the others were sitting. Are you really that surprised? We have done damn near everything together since we were kids, John said while chuckling as Violet took notice of Pyrrha. That your girlfriend? Violet asked as she pointed at Pyrrha, much to John's embarrass as he waved his hands in front of her face. No, it's not like that, Violet. She's just a friend, John said as he got a drink as Izuku noticed Violet with John, making him smile as he waved her over as she followed John back to the table. Guys, this is my cousin Violet. John introduced his and Izuku's friends to Violet. Wait, then that means she's... Nora said as Violet just playfully hit John's shoulder. Hey, they're trustworthy people, they already know about our after-school activities, John said as Violet just chuckled as she sat down. You've definitely made lots of friends, Violet said as Izuku and John just had sheepish looks on their faces. Being in an unjudgmental environment tends to be a good place to find friends, John joked as Pyrrha had a little blush on her face. Least the explosive dog is out of our hair, I really hate that guy, Violet said as Izuku, John, Denki, Kirishima and Shoto all nodded while Rwby and the others were confused at what they were talking about. Who's this dog you're talking about? Young asked, being very curious. Some egotistical asshole who is not important, Izuku said with a lot of stubble rage in his voice, which took Team Rwby, Nora, Pyrrha and Ren by surprise seeing Izuku so mad as he quickly calmed down. Sorry about that, didn't know what came over me, Izuku said as the others' shock settled down, though Young, Rwby, Blake and Weiss all had a feeling that Izuku's sudden outburst was deeper than a one-sided rivalry. Though Young could faintly see a tear roll down Izuku's face. Izuku, are you really okay? Meanwhile, Ashbin was in his office, doing some work on the whole Paladin incident as he heard the door open, before turning around to see Mr. Incredible in casual clothes. "Oh, what do I owe the pleasure, Bob?" Ashbin asked as he got up before the two men shook hands. "I was in the area, felt like having a little chat," Bob said as he sat down in front of Ashbin's desk. "About what exactly?" "Not that I mind receiving a visit from a friend, but you normally drop by unannounced either as a surprise or for some important business, and I get the feeling it's the latter," Ashbin said as Bob pulled out a piece of the destroyed Paladin and placed it on Oz's desk. "Oz, I want in," Bob said, which took Ashbin by surprise. "Are you sure about this, Bob? This is quite the stressful and seemingly never-ending endeavor that involves the whole world," Ashbin said as Bob had no look of hesitation in his eyes. "I'm a superhero, Oz. Things like this is what I signed up for. And this shows that something very bad is coming, so you'll have to kick things into high gear if you want to counter," Bob continued as Ashbin knew there was no way he could convince Bob to change his mind. "I'm guessing Helen also wants in?" Ashbin asked as Bob nodded his head. "I figured," Ashbin said as he stood up before he and Bob shook hands. Chapter 11 Standstill. "Buddy, you're looking like crap, even more than usual," President Mike said to Aizawa, who's looking more sleep-deprived and disheveled than what he normally looks like. "Tell me something you haven't told me 1,000 times before, Hizashi," Aizawa said as he downed a cup of coffee in one go. "Well, maybe if you took mine and Namiri's advice, you'd definitely be a little more lively," Mike said as Aizawa slammed his hand against the wall. "How can I take care of myself when I can't even look after my own damn students?" Aizawa snapped as he slammed his head against the wall. "First Oboro, and now this mess? I'm such a damn failure," Aizawa said, self-doubt being very evident in his voice at what he saw as his fault as he kept bashing his head against the wall, prompting Mike to pull his friend away from the wall in an attempt to stop Aizawa from hurting himself. "Shota, this wasn't your fault. Bakugo's the type of person to do whatever the hell he wants, regardless if he's told to stop," Mike said, trying to combat the self-loathing Aizawa was feeling. "Yes, it is. I had a gut feeling there was more between Bakugo and Midoriya, but I didn't follow through with it because I wanted to believe my gut feeling was wrong. Had I done something sooner, this wouldn't have happened. Shota, there's nothing that you could have done to stop this from happening. No matter what you could have done, Spidey still would have killed All for One, and he'd still be ostracized by most of the students here," Mike said as Aizawa just sighed, knowing that Mike had a point. "But the least we can do for the kid is to do better." Meanwhile. And that's everything that happened, Izuku said as he and John finished relaying everything that had happened the day prior to Ashbin and Glinda. "Well, this is certainly troubling," Ashbin said as he and Glinda were processing everything they had learned from Izuku. "You don't say, the moment Ironwood leaves his shiny little fortress in Atlas, something like this happens. That doesn't exactly make him look good. Not like he was already looking good to begin with anyway," John remarked with a hint of sarcasm in his voice while Izuku nodded in agreement. "You're not wrong there," Glinda said as Ashbin just rolled his eyes. "What, you know I'm right. James treats every and all situations like a hick measuring contest. What more does he have to prove to everyone?" Glinda semi-ranted at Ironwood's habit of constantly flexing the strength of his army, something Izuku and John wished they didn't have to deal with as kids. "So, what do we do now?" Izuku asked as Ashbin took a moment to think about how to go about things. "Honestly, there's so many unknown factors that taking immediate action would be a bad idea. Only thing that is for certain is they have a base somewhere in the southeast, so our best bet for now is to wait until we find something more concrete," Ashbin said, which was not exactly what Izuku and John wanted to hear as they were about to leave the room before hearing Ashbin call out for Izuku, making them stop. "Izuku, I can understand your weariness, but can you at least put it to the side in order to work with James?" Ashbin asked as Izuku turned to look at the headmaster, his expression being one that wasn't easy to tell what it was. "Yes, despite his insistence on showing off the strength of his army and saving the thinking for later, James is a good man," Glinda said as Izuku thought to himself for a moment before speaking. "No offense, professors, but let's see how long that will last." Izuku said before he and John turned and left the office. Well, he didn't say no, Almight said, trying to find some bright side to this whole mess. Why didn't you say no? John asked as he and Izuku began walking towards the dorms. Technically, I did say no. What's the point of trusting a man who we don't know is fully on our side or not? Izuku asked as John knew he had a fair point. By the way, John, did you get any warning signals whenever you're around Penny? Izuku asked as John looked at his best friend with a look of surprise. Yours went off around her too? John asked as Izuku nodded. Not just me then. You think she's putting on an act or something? John suggested, only for Izuku to immediately shake his head in disagreement with John's idea. No way, no one can convincingly keep up a facade of kindness and social unawareness without letting it slip, being from Atlas or not, Izuku said as he placed his thumb and index finger as he continued to think. There has to be something up with Penny, because our spider sense shouldn't have kicked in around her if there's not, Izuku said before John proceeded to change the subject. Let's put that on the back burner for now. What are we going to do about the whole thing with Roman and the White Fang? John asked as Izuku knew that John didn't want to just sit around and wait. John, I hate having to sit around and wait, but that's all we can do at the moment. You heard what Professor Almight said, there's too many unknown factors, Izuku said as John was annoyed before Izuku placed his hand on John's shoulder. Look, let's just discuss this with the others, Izuku said as he and John continued towards the dorms, making their way to Team Ruby's dorm as their teams were already there waiting for the two. Well, how did it go with the professor? Kirishima asked while the others were in suspense waiting for their answer as Izuku sighed. Well, the thing is, we're at a standstill, Izuku said as the others were shocked at what they heard. What do you mean we're at a standstill? Nora asked as John sighed before bracing himself. Well, we don't really have any clear idea of what's going on, so doing anything right now would basically be us running around in circles like idiots, Izuku explained to the group. So, we have to wait until something comes up? Ren asked as Izuku and John nodded their heads in unison. You have to be kidding, we just have to sit around and waiting? There's innocent people's lives at stake, Blake yelled out before shooting up as Izuku placed his hands on her shoulders. We know that, Blake, we just have to be smart about this and figure out what exactly Roman is up to, Izuku explained to Blake, who though about what he said before sitting back down. So, we know that they're operating somewhere in the southeast of Vale, John said as they started to list off what they do know. And the Schnee Company records have singled out Vale as the primary target for dust robberies for the past few months, Weiss added. Don't forget the stolen military tech, Yang chimed in. Besides, we go after them this soon, we'd be more than likely walking into a trap, John said to Blake, pointing out that premature action would be a bad idea. Plus, adequate sleep would be beneficial, Ida said as the three teams looked at the door, being shocked seeing him, Momo, Achiko and Kyoka at the door. Oh hey, how much of that did you hear? Izuku asked the four. Enough, Kyoka said while fiddling with her jacks as they walked into the room while Momo closed the door. We want in Midoriya, Momo said as Izuku and John looked at each other before chuckling. I had a feeling you guys would getting dragged into this, Izuku said before handing them communicators. Kind of a bit excessive with the whole spider thing, don't you think? Ida commented on the spider design of the communicators, getting a deadpan look from Izuku and John. Coming from the guy whose family reuses the same hero name, John remarked with a smirk. I'll shut up then, Ida said while holding his head down as Kyoka looked at the window. Guys, what's with the almost shirtless idiot outside the window? Kyoka asked as they turned to face the window, seeing Sun hanging upside down from his tail. Who the buckeye is that? Achiko yelled in shock as she jumped into Kyoka's arms. Is he in a weird boy band? Ida asked, wondering why Sun's shirt was wide open. That's the first thing that came to your mind? Kyoka asked with a deadpan tone. Sun? Blake asked in a shocked and surprised tone. How did you get up there? Yang asked in disbelief and nearly the same shock as Blake. It's easy, I do it all the time, Sun said completely nonchalantly. You do what? Weiss asked, not being too pleased about being startled and Sun eavesdropping on their conversation, especially for Izuku and John's safety. I climb trees all the time, Sun explained while not even reacting to Weiss scowling at him. Me and Izuku can climb up walls, but you don't see us bragging about it, John thought to himself as Sun then flipped into the dorm room. So we finally getting back at that Torchwick guy? Sun asked as Kirishima and Denki both tried their best to fight back the urge to start laughing. You're a day late there, knock off Goku, Shoto remarked as Kirishima and Denki bruised into laughter over what he called Sun. What's Goku have to do with this? Sun asked as everyone all face-palmed at Sun being completely oblivious to the comparison. Sorry Sun, we felt more comfortable and trusting of Izuku and his team to help us, Blake explained as Sun had a dumbfounded look on his face as Neptune slipped into the room, before throwing up out the window. What the hell, you trust the new guys more than me? Sun asked as John rolled his eyes. No offense, but the first time we met you were running away from the cops because you couldn't bother to pay for a boat ride. Again, no offense, Yan said as Momo and Ida looked very confused. Those are like really, really cheap, Denki commented. How do you know he didn't have any? Achiko asked. He bought bananas not even an hour after the fight at the docks, Rwby explained. Wow, how much of an unmanly cheap ass can you get? Kirishima remarked. I don't get why you trust him, he looks scrawny as hell and probably loses in every fight he gets into, Sun said before John got up in his face. I'll have you know I've had the honor of knowing Izuku since we were babies. He's basically my brother in all but blood, so if you have a problem with him, you have a problem with me. Got that, Sun Wukong? John asked with a serious tone in his voice which got Sun to shut up and quickly nod his head repeatedly. I don't get why he's so special, he looks as plain as you can get and is the farthest thing from cool, Neptune said with a snide tone in his voice. He's cooler than you can ever dream of, Momo shouted, taking everyone especially Kyoka by surprise of her sudden outburst. Yeah, Yamamo is right. And you say Izuku's plain when he has dreamy emerald eyes, messy green hair and his freckles are in a diamond position. That sounds like the least plain person ever, Yang and Weiss both said in unison, with Weiss blushing while speaking. How about we put your money where your mouths are? Me, John and you too, tomorrow during sparring class, Izuku said as Sun just nodded before leaving out the window without saying a word as Neptune walked out through the door. Note to self, make sure to cover the window whenever we have meetings in our dorms, Rwby said, wanting to avoid any more awkward situations like the one that had just transpired. Trouble just can't help but find you no matter where you go, huh Midoriya? Ida remarked as Izuku just sighed. I'm long since used to it by now. Besides, I know who and what I am. Meanwhile, in the depths of a dark and eerie castle, lays an ancient and immortal witch hellbent on taking control of the world, and her name is Salem. Your end is coming up very soon, Ozma, and I can't wait to watch you burn, Salem said while thinking about her plans before she is surrounded by her magic and received a vision. Salem saw a city, one unlike any city she had ever seen on Remnant before in her very long life before it suddenly turned into chaos before she turned around and saw Spider-Man. Just not the Spider-Man she knows. Salem then saw that he was confronting something she only could describe as a demonic goblin out of someone's worst nightmare. The two exchanged words that Salem couldn't hear as they were about to clash, only for the vision to end. And to say Salem was confused was an understatement. I don't understand, what was that vision even about? There can't be more than one Spider-Man besides the Scarlet Spider. Right. Chapter 12, Extracurricular. Wonder if I should get Yan a gift. Wait, what am I thinking? She asked just a friend. Well, I guess I can justify it as for being a nice friend. That works. Izuku thought to himself as he wrote on one of his many journals while Pyrrha was fighting Team CRDL, which she was winning by a landslide. God, John was he lying when he said these guys suck, Dove's the only one of them to actually be competent in a fight. We fought low-level thugs with more battle IQ than them. Hell, I honestly can't tell if they actually do suck or Carden's just that much of a piss-poor leader, or it's bit of both. Probably bit of both. Izuku thought as he started a page on Kaisen. Overwhelming pride and arrogance, inability to work with others at the expense of his ego, next to no tactical think and forward planning, tendency to try and brute force his way to victory. Either doesn't he bother to use his semblance, or hasn't he unlocked it yet? Izuku stopped writing as he thought of the similarities between Bakugo and Kaisen, though Kaisen just seems like just an obnoxious hick who thinks he has all that just because he has a bit of money, compared to Bakugo who genuinely believes he is the most important person in the world and wouldn't he be above letting people suffer to get what he wants. I swear catch. Bakugo, you better hope you and I never cross paths again. But I'd be lying if part of me wants it to happen so I can make you pay, and enjoy it immensely. Izuku said to himself as he clenched his fists, which Weiss took notice of as she was shocked to see that. Yo, Izuku! John said as Izuku immediately snapped out of his little trance as he looked up at John, and noticed Pyrrha had already handed Ciardel their asses on a silver plate. We're on, let us do this! John said as Izuku placed his journal down and got up as they headed to the arena, while Weiss noticed a photo fall out of Izuku's journal as she picked it up, planning on putting it back, but she couldn't resist the urge to look at it as she did so. Weiss saw Izuku and John in a huddle with three men in their 20s, wearing similar spider-themed outfits, with Weiss noticing that the three men looked pretty similar to each other, while one was blonde wearing red and a darkish blue, standing on the right, and the other two had brown hair, one wearing red and blue who was standing in the middle, and the other wearing red and black standing to the left, the striking similarities making her believe the three are brothers. That's weird. Izuku and John are supposed to be the only Spider-Men, yet there's supposed to be three others? Weiss thought to herself as she noticed Izuku's suit in the photo was green rather than the red and blue he wears now. What are you looking at, Weiss scream? Yang asked, shocking Weiss as Yang noticed the photo she was looking at. Where do you find that? Yang asked as she took the picture from Weiss and took her own look at it. Well, it slipped out of Izuku's journal. I was going to put it back, but I couldn't help it, Weiss admitted sheepishly while she and Yang whispered to each other. Plus, it confuses me since apparently there's three other Spider-Men other Izuku and John. Wow, Izuku looks cute in that green suit. And whoever these guys are, they have great taste in women, Yang said as Weiss took another look at the photo and saw the women Yang had mentioned. Weiss and Yang took notice of a blonde woman in a white and black suit, a red-headed woman in a red and white suit, and a woman with platinum blonde in a black suit clinging onto the man in the red and blue, with two other redheads clinging onto the other two Spider-Men. Whoa, red and blue must be a beast if he's got three girlfriends, Yang said with a chuckle as Weiss rolled her eyes, before Yang flipped the picture around and noticed a note written on the back. Good luck back home, hope we all see you two again soon. From Peter, Ben, Kane, Harry, MJ, Gwen, Felicia, Janine and Anna. I'm counting three guys there, so where's the last guy? Yang wondered as Weiss took the picture from her and placed the photo back into Izuku's journal, while Izuku and John walked into the arena where Sun and Neptune were waiting. Alright, who is ready for ass-kicking 101? Izuku asked as he and John stretched their arms and legs. Only ones get their asses kicked is you two, their broccoli head, Neptune said as Izuku immediately rolled his eyes at what he was just called. Oh geez, come up with something original. It's always either broccoli boy or broccoli head. I'd be rich based off how many times I'd be called that, Izuku said with a deadpan tone as John gave him a pat on the back. Well, maybe get rid of that nasty-ass haircut and dye it so it doesn't look stupid, Neptune remarked as Yang felt her blood boil. Izuku, John, beat their asses, Yang shouted as Izuku and John smirked as they got into battle stances. Here's lesson 1, don't watch the mouth, watch the hands. Huh! Sun and Neptune asked in sync before Izuku threw John towards them, Sun dodging while John got Neptune in the gut with his shield, which caused the blue-haired wannabe playboy flying back. Let us dance! Izuku ran towards Sun, who promptly started attacking Izuku with his gunchucks as Izuku kept on dodging each strike and shot being flown his way. Wow, I'm surprised you haven't hurt yourself with these things. Nunchucks aren't the easiest things to use, Izuku said as Sun tried to hit him in the leg, only to see Izuku jump over him. Seriously, most knuckleheads picks up them and suddenly think they're the next Mikey. It takes a lot more than knowing how to use nunchucks to be like Mikey. You also have to look good with orange and green and have a love of pizza. Izuku joked as Sun tried to get in a backhanded swing, but Izuku quickly caught it. Do you ever know when to shut up? Sun asked as he tried to throw the back of his head into Izuku's face before being kicked away from the green-haired boy, prompting the monkey boy to get back up into Izuku's face while John was absolutely beating Neptune's ass. Come on, what happened to all that confidence you were spitting not too long ago? John asked as he kept on sending attack after attack at Neptune, who was dodging like his life depending on it. Come on, fight back, fight back! John shouted as he kicked Neptune in the nuts, quickly sending Neptune to his knees before he fell backwards. Why don't you live up to the name of your weapon and try harder, huh? John joked, which got a laugh from Yang and Rwby. I don't get it, Venom said, not understanding what the two sisters found so funny. He has a try hard and his weapon is a trident. Izuku explained as Venom quickly caught on, prompting him to chuckle as Izuku pulled off a spin kick on Sun. Gah, can you take it easy a bit? Sun asked, only for Izuku to grab him by the face and slamming him into the ground. Never expect things to be easy during a fight. If this were a real battle, you would have already lost by now, Izuku said as he kicked Sun back onto his feet, while Mercury was focusing on the one-sided ass kicking with keen interest. This too might prove to be obstacles. Maybe even more than the invincible girl herself, but nowhere near as much as Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider will be, Mercury thought to himself as Izuku and John suddenly swapped opponents. Izuku activated One for All as he started going to town on Neptune, now dodging like he was stuck in the apocalypse, while John was using Sun's fighting style against him as Sun jumped into the air, prompting John to grab his tail and slammed him into the ground as hard as he could. That's odd. Greeny's powers is a lot like Almight's. Weird, Mercury said as he made a mental note as Sun managed to hit John in the face with his gunchucks, only making him flinch as he and Izuku looked and nodded at each other, quickly chucking the two towards each other before they knocked Sun and Neptune to the ground as they both tapped out. The winners are Izuku Midoriya and John Arc, Glinda said as Izuku and John high-five while Team Rwby and Pyrrha were both cheering for their win, though Blake was more quiet about it due to her being tired. Well done, you two. Both of you will no doubt be qualified for the tournament, Glinda said as Izuku and John both chuckled as John placed his arm around Izuku's shoulder. Thank you, Professor. Hopefully we don't disappoint, Izuku said as he and John walked back to the rest of their peers and gathered their things. And that's it for today. Reminder that the school dances this weekend, but you all will have your first mission on Monday. I will not accept any excuses, Glinda said sternly as everyone began to leave while Izuku and John walked past Mercury. Both of their spider senses kicked in, but they didn't show it before they caught up with Team Rwby and Izuku's team. Dude, that was spectacular. How does you guys work together that well? Yang asked as she got up in Izuku's face, getting a great look at his dreamy green eyes and his diamond-positioned freckles. Lots of practice and a borderline brotherly connection, Izuku said as John chuckled at what he said. He not wrong. Izuku's the closest thing I have to a brother, which does help me cope with having 7 sisters, John said as everyone other than Izuku dropped their jaws in shock. 7 sisters? How? Kirishima asked out of pure shock while Denki was trying his best to do the math in his head. Least they were out of love, can't really say the same for me, Shoto thought to himself as Sun walked up to Blake, who was distracted by the book she was reading. Hey Blake, are you feeling okay? Sun asked, which made Blake slightly flinch a bit as she looked at him. I'm fine, Blake said as she closed the book she was reading. So, I heard there's this dance on the weekend. Sounds pretty lame, but you and me, not so lame, right? Sun asked as Blake looked confused while Kirishima and Denki both face-palmed. I swear, you could write a whole book about fumbling just because of him and Bluey over there, Kirishima whispered to Denki, who simply nodded. This and my netta has really helped me realize what to do and not do when it comes to girls, Denki whispered back to Kirishima while Shoto was thinking about Soba to distract him. The dance, you wanna go with me or not? Sun asked as Blake had a deadpan look on her face. What? I thought it'd be funny, Denki said as he was getting weird looks from his friends before they saw Nora running over to them. Guys, you gotta see this. Carden is getting his ass handed to him again by some red blur. Follow me. Nora shouted as Izuku and John looked at each other in surprise as they followed Nora while Sun was still mopping over getting rejected by Blake as his teammates tried to reassure him. Gah, slow down you speed freak, Carden shouted as he tried to swing his mace, only to get a super speed knuckle sandwich when sent him flying onto his ass. Yikes, he'll definitely feel this in the morning, Rin said to himself as Izuku, John and the others showed up to see what was happening. Oh, you guys made it just in time, Rin said as Carden gave up as Izuku and John just chuckled as they walked over the little commotion. You and Jack couldn't resist, could you, Dash? Hey, you should know we have zero tolerance for bullshit, John, Dash said as John and Izuku hugged them. Unless it's your own bullshit to get on Violet's nerves, right? Izuku joked as John playfully hit his two cousins on the shoulders. Hey, we're triplets, it's natural, Jack said as the others walked up to them as Carden got up and ran off, not wanting to get his ass kicked more than he already had. Guys, meet my other two cousins, Dash and Jack. John introduced his friends to Dash and Jack, with Dash noticing Yang being really close to Izuku, which made him chuckle. Oh, I am going to get a lot of mileage out of this, Dash thought to himself. Well, like John said, these two knuckleheads are my younger twin brothers, and we're going to be studying here, Violet explained as Izuku and John both lit up with joy. Oh hell yeah, this is going to be awesome, John said as he and Izuku high-five. Wait, how come you're showing up now? Weiss asked. We would have attended sooner, but certain things got in the way. You know how the hero lifestyle works, Dash said as the triplets started to make their way towards Ojpin's office, with help from John and Izuku. Time skip. Izuku and his team were in their dorm while Izuku was fiddling with his web shooters as Kirishima, Denki and Shoto were a bit stressed out over the upcoming dance. Oh geez, I'm not the only one stressed out about the dance, right? Denki asked as Shoto and Kirishima both nodded a bit as Izuku turned to look at his friends. Don't stress out about finding a date for the dance, guys. Think of the dance as more of a celebration, and if you guys happen to find a date by then, fine, and if not, that's also fine, Izuku said as he continued to work on his B-shooters. Easy for you to say, bro, you've basically got a bunch of girls hanging off your shoulder, Kirishima said as Shoto looked confused at the lack of girls hanging onto Izuku's shoulder. You're making it sound like I'm some kind of charismatic god or something. Besides, I kind of doubt anyone would want to ask me to the dance anyway, Izuku said as he continued on with his web shooters while the others all looked at each other before they huddled up. So we play wingmen? Kirishima asked while whispering to Denki and Shoto, both of which nodded without hesitation as they broke out of the huddle. So, should be fun having Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl's kids as classmates, Shoto said as Izuku let out a soft chuckle. Trust me, you should have seen Dash and Jack back when we were kids. They were absolute menaces. Hell, they still are when they want to be, Izuku said as he looked back at his childhood memories with a smile. Meanwhile, now we have Piranikos, Emerald said while looking at her phone while Cinder was working on a dress while Mercury was reading a comic. As yes, the invincible girl, Cinder said while she continues working on the dress. She's good, but I think we should be more worried about those two best buddies, Izuku Midoriya and John Arc, Mercury said as Cinder's ears perked up at what he said. Do tell. Well, quite frankly, they are absolutely beasts if what me and M saw during combat class is anything to go by. Plus, Greeny was the top of his class at U.A before he transferred here for whatever reason. And I might be wrong, but his powers seem to be a lot like Almight's, Mercury explained as Cinder looked down at Emerald. Interesting. His power mixed with his teamwork with the Blonde Knight and the Invincible Girl would provide to be a major problem. Add all three of them to the list, Cinder said as Emerald did just that as she placed Izuku, John and Pyrrha on the list Cinder had mentioned. But what do we do if Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider get involved? Because if they even get as much as a hint of what we're up to, Who knows when they'll get involved, especially if Mr. Incredible started sniffing around. Emerald said, being worried about their plan falling through, but Cinder and Mercury weren't worried. Once we find the other half, you'll be able to defeat them all, no problem, Mercury said with a smirk which served to put Emerald at ease. It's not about overpowering the enemy, it's about taking away what power they have, or more accurately, taking away what drives them. Once we find what drives the spiders and Mr. Incredible, they will be no threat to us. And we will in time, Cinder said as Mercury let out an annoyed sigh. Oh, I hate waiting, Mercury said, while Cinder could only smirk as she stood up. Oh, don't worry, Mercury, we have such a fun weekend in store for us. Meanwhile, Team Rwby was minding their own business in their dorm, with Yang and Weiss both being too busy thinking about the picture Izuku had in his journal. Maybe those 3 spider guys predated Izuku and John? No, that can't be right. At least they would have been Dokkan to some degree if that were true, Yang thought to herself. Wait, the message said good luck for Izuku and John when they got back home, and they both mentioned the only place they have ever gone to outside of Vale was Mistral, and nothing was ever said about a bunch of spider people operating there. Weiss said in her head before she suddenly thought of the idea. Wait, maybe, just maybe, multiverse theory might actually be true. It would explain a lot. Oh, who am I kidding? There is no way that the multiverse actually exists. Right.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.